Got a lot of Padres subjects to talk about as well, but got to be fired up on a Tuesday when you got college basketball and one of your teams is participating in it with Aztecs and North Carolina later on today. Should be a fun contest. Obviously, we talked a lot about it yesterday in terms of San Diego State and North Carolina, but more so on North Carolina making the NCAA tournament and the fact that they probably didn't have the metrics in order to do so. But that doesn't mean they're an easy out for San Diego State. I mean, once you seed the tournament, all bets are off for pretty much every seed. Although we're going to take a look at this year's NCAA tournament later on in the show. We didn't get too much into it yesterday just because we had so much Padres news with Michael King being announced as the opening day starter and the different avenues we got to talk about with that in particular. But when it comes to the NCAA tournament, and I mean, the only real kind of misjustice, if you will, miscarriage of justice of the NCAA tournament was North Carolina in over probably West Virginia. I mean, Indiana kind of did it to themselves in general, even though they got left out. But that's really the only gripe that anybody would potentially have. And then other than that, I mean, maybe a couple seedings here and there. But the way that the bracket is played out, I mean, there's some regions that have a lot of opportunities for double-digit seeds to win in the first couple of rounds. There's regions that look like it's going to be straight chalk, and there's regions that is going to be very difficult for some of the favorites just because of how loaded that particular region is. And we'll break that down later on in the show. We do want to talk about a lot of Padres, topics that are still continuing as we get closer and closer to opening day. We are now 9 days away from opening day at Petco Park against the Atlanta Braves. And we talked about it a little bit yesterday. Kevin Acee had it in his article when talking about the players and everything involved, of guys that are going to make the team, guys that are probably going to be on the team by the time the season starts. And one of those players is Yuli Gurriel. And then yesterday he goes out there and has a great performance for the San Diego Padres. And Mike Schilt was asked about it yesterday, and we'll talk about that later on as well. But the roster is getting more and more solidified, and there's more guys battling for less spots as spring training continues. And you got guys like Gavin Sheets and his stock continuing to rise. He was on with Gwynn and Chris yesterday, and we'll probably play a couple clips of his and some others too as we highlight Gwynn and Chris being out there at spring training. But a lot of different storylines with the Padres, including a really good article by Kevin Acee this morning on Manny Machado and how Manny Machado has his sights set on the Hall of Fame. I mean, he obviously wants the, part of his legacy, and he's got 8 more years left on this contract. And, he wants to go out there and continually put up numbers. And in this article, it talks about how it's the first time he's felt healthy in probably the last 3 years, despite the fact that he still put up great numbers in the last couple of years while having really long slumps in the season and stretches that he obviously didn't like the way the results were for himself. That's a big key to this Padres season this year. I mean, we've talked about a lot of these players stepping up. And last week we talked about, certain role players that can fill in and be last year's role players. Last year's Donovan Solano, or this year's Donovan Solano could be Jose Iglesias. Remember we talked about that because the Padres offseason wasn't necessarily a big splash like it's been in the years past. And that's 2 off seasons in a row. It hasn't been as big of a splash as it's been in the past. But that being said, sometimes just getting your guys back to full strength is just as good as an offseason. I think you're going to see that with the Atlanta Braves this year. But you'll probably also see it with the San Diego Padres. We talked about Fernando, and we've talked about Arise, and they've had good springs. But Manny Machado is also feeling a lot better than he has in the past. He has put together and put together an offseason where he feels a lot better. He's healed up with his elbow. He had that ankle injury a couple years ago as well. grade 3 ankle strain. I mean, it's something that's like the worst level of degree that you could potentially have for an ankle, and yet he still didn't go on the injured list. He's continued to participate and play. And Kevin Acee lays that out in an article in a good interview with Manny Machado. But the big thing that's the selling point is Manny Machado coming back healthy is almost better than an offseason where you make some splashes. And I'll make the case for it at noon. But there's a lot of good things happening with the Padres right now behind the scenes, despite maybe the offseason or lack thereof that they had, and a team like the Los Angeles Dodgers who scare off a lot of people with not only winning a World Series, but then adding to their payroll on top of that. And of course, they won early this morning, which is interesting. I don't know why we continue to do these, opening days in foreign lands. And I know baseball's trying to grow their game a little bit more, but there's something about American sports being sent off to other countries all the time, to grow the game, when we don't get that in return from a lot of other countries or other regions that have elite sports as well, especially in the soccer world. I mean, starting the opening day this morning at 3:15 in the morning, and then having another game tomorrow, and then having a week off before you start playing other games. I mean, why are we continuing to do this? I get it. You want to, showcase your talent and everything like that. And there's obviously a big market over there in Japan right now, but does it have to be before opening day? We'll talk about that at 11:30. We talked about Gavin Sheets' stock continue to rise. We'll help you out with your bracket a little bit today. With some upsets that you might be able to pick tomorrow. We'll go more into the bracket, since you got to get your picks in before Thursday morning before they tip off. So you got some time. These games tonight don't count towards your bracket if you're filling out a bracket, so don't worry about it. But we'll get you the full preview of San Diego State, North Carolina, coming up in the 1 o'clock hour. Sam Levitt will join us at 12:30 to talk latest in the Padres world out there in Peoria. And that will be our show. And plus, take your phone calls, see what you're feeling when it comes to Padres baseball, or what your feelings are for the Aztecs tonight. We'll love to hear your phone calls, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. I do want to get into one of the questions of the day, if you will, in terms of San Diego State's season if they were to lose this game. But I do want to put out there the do you know ball question of the day. And this I think this plays tonight. I was talking about it with my buddies, and right now the track record with me and my friends in terms of watching each other's teams play at either a bar or like together in a public setting has been catastrophically bad results. So I posed the question because this happens a lot. If your team is playing in a big game, I mean, I guess it has to be more specifically a big game. Like if I went to my local watering hole on a Friday, and the Padres are playing a Friday game in the middle of July, I could go watch the game. I don't really care. But we're talking about the Aztec game tonight, where you're watching it. You're going to go to a bar to watch it. You're going to watch it at a watch party. You're going over to your buddy's house. You're going to watch it at home. The question is, can you watch your favorite team play in a big game in a public setting? That's an interesting question. There's a lot of people that can't do that. They got to be locked in a confined space, locked into the game, don't want any distractions, don't want to be irritated by other people, maybe at the bar or whatever, what have you. I mean, if I'm traveling on the road somewhere, that might be my only option to go watch a game. But the last thing I want to do is deal with, sometimes the opposing fans being there when you're at like a bar or a watch party, or even like the neutral guy or betting guy that happens to be betting against your team that has no awareness of what's going on in the game, no really cares, and makes a bunch of noise during it. I mean, that could get really annoying. So that's our question of the day. You can go check it out on X. It's on our page and on my page as well. Can you watch it in a public setting? There's a lot of people that said no. There's a lot of people that say yes, and we'll get your results later on in the show of watching your favorite team on a watch party or public setting. If you can and you're watching tonight, let me know. Friday coming up Friday, we're gonna have to deal with that situation just because we'll be broadcasting live at Dave and Buster's. Now, watching your favorite team in a public setting while you do a talk show, now that's a different story. That's a question that might have to be asked for Chris Ello and Tony Gwynn Jr. But hopefully the Aztecs could get to that point before. 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. I do have to say, and I have to ask the question, and maybe this is a question for tomorrow. I hope it's not. But San Diego State, North Carolina tonight in the first four. If San Diego State loses tonight, would you consider this season a successful season? How far in the NCAA tournament do they have to go to make this season a successful season? I'll answer that question and talk more about the Aztecs when we come back on the Braden Surprenant Show. Just getting started on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Baseball coverage on 97 through the Fan is presented by T-Mobile. Head to T-Mobile.com and get a great deal on an iPhone 16 Pro. Braden Surprenant here on the Braden Surprenant Show. San Diego's number one sports station, 97.3 The Fan, as we got Aztec basketball tonight for the First Four. NCAA tournament action getting started with the First Four. We'll get you covered on that later on in the show to get a deeper dive into the game and get you ready for North Carolina as the Aztecs try to win and then head their way to Milwaukee to potentially take on Ole Miss coming up on Friday at 1:05, hopefully, because we will be live at Dave & Buster's on Friday for the NCAA tournament. Should be a great, great afternoon. Let's talk about the Aztecs in a sense of whether or not this is a successful season, even if the season ends today. I mean, I think a lot of Aztec fans are going to be cautiously optimistic about that in terms of, you make the NCAA tournament, and every time you make the NCAA tournament as a mid-major, it's a successful season. For me as an Aztec fan growing up and still an Aztec fan, if you will, being from San Diego, not an Aztec alumni, so a little bit different. I look at it in a couple of different ways. I think for what they've been able to accomplish this year, with the young roster that they have had, I think it's great. They've put together some really good wins this year, the Aztecs have. They got to play in that players tournament in which they will play in again next season. And I don't know how the invites work for that, but it sounds like they're going to be consistently in that thing. And as long as they can stay in that tournament, it's going to be great, not only for resume building for the future, but also in terms of name, image, and likeness fees to help keep a lot of these players on the roster, which is a huge, huge problem for schools right now. We played Steve Alford's clip on that yesterday about, the biggest challenge right now is just trying to keep players, because the first thing they ask you all the time has nothing to do with making themselves better. It's just, how much can you pay me? And that's going to be an issue for San Diego State when this season ends. Now, tonight, the Aztecs should have Magoon. Brian Dutcher talked about it yesterday. We'll get to that in a little bit. But, they're going to have him play in some capacity. Now, whether or not he could be a major impact coming off of his injury or not remains to be the question, and that will be the big question going into tonight's game against North Carolina. They could definitely use Magoon tonight against North Carolina. Steve Fisher was on with Ben and Woods earlier today. He mentioned, when I look at a North Carolina team, this isn't a traditional North Carolina team in the sense that they have that, a couple of big 6'11", 7-footers in the paint that you can just flip the ball to. So that bodes well for San Diego State. The other thing that he mentioned in this particular game was the fact that they will get up and run with you, though, and they will run up and down the court. And if you don't get back on defense, they'll run you out of the building, which is definitely something the Aztecs have to be worried about. But the fact that the Aztecs, again, are one of the best defensive teams in the country year in and year out is a big asset for them in a game against North Carolina, because they could keep the scoring low and then battle it out. I think another big key to this game, as well, as mentioned again by Steve Fisher, is when you get to these NCAA tournament games. I have been fortunate enough now to attend 4 of them, 4 or 5, and I've been able to cover 3. I've covered the last 3 NCAA tournaments here at San Diego State. The ones that are at Viejas with neutral teams, right? And every time I cover one of those events, and if you haven't been to an NCAA tournament event, that you got to go to any of the rounds. First round, second round, Sweet 16. I've been to all of those. Haven't been to an Elite 8 or a Final Four. I think a lot of you have been to a Final Four when the Aztecs went, which is great. But if you haven't been to an NCAA tournament event, it is like nothing on this planet. It is the most crazy environment for a sporting event at every venue because of how many games are getting played and the intensity that is at stake. The thing that makes the NCAA tournament so great, and I've said this so many times, what makes the NCAA tournament so great is the drama and the pressure that is on these players who could be playing the sport of basketball for the final time. These guys have been playing basketball since they were like 5 years old. All of them. And I'm not just talking about the Aztecs. I'm just talking in general. They've all been playing basketball since they were like 5 years old. It's been everything that they've known for the majority of their life. It's the workouts. It's the practices early in the morning. It's the tournaments. It's the AAU events. It's, driving with their parents to all these different locations. It's maybe flying to different places. They've played basketball their whole life. That has been what their life has been for since they were born to this point. And not all of them go to the NBA, a very small amount, and not a lot of them play internationally. And for the players that are out of eligibility, they are playing potentially to just continue their career. I mean, that's the level of passion and intensity that is hard to match anywhere else. I mean, think about they are playing for their basketball lives. They will never play the sport again if they lose. That's the stakes of the NCAA tournament. That's what makes this event so great. That's why you get schools like Princeton and Yale and Santa Clara back in the day and University of Maryland, Baltimore County going out there and upsetting some of the best teams in the country. That's why I think UCSD's got a really good shot against Michigan. The way they play together as a unit, they're a little bit older, right? They don't have really any major future basketball events coming back in their life. I mean, this might be it. So with all that being said, the other element that makes this tournament so great are the crowds. Obviously, they have everything seeded out where the higher seeds play closer to home. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen Kansas play in like Kansas City, right? And some of these games are very close to home, not that far of a drive or whatever. And so they overtake the arena. But aside from those teams, you get both fan bases that travel, and then you get the neutral crowd. And half the battle of the game is winning over the neutral crowd. And winning over the people at Dayton tonight is what San Diego State is going to be tasked with doing to help them out a little bit more. I mean, it's the game within the game. There's so many of those in sports. And in the NCAA tournament, something you'll never see before, and you don't see it in any other setting, is winning over the neutral fan that goes to the games from that city. And Steve Fisher brought that up on the interview with Ben and Woods. It's so true. I mean, I have seen neutral crowds flip on teams in the middle of a game, and that propelled the momentum that they needed to end up winning in that particular region, or winning in that first round to the second, or maybe even getting that first two games and then going on to the Sweet 16. I've seen it here at Viejas Arena with the local San Diego State fans that might have not traveled with San Diego State, but, got tickets to watch the first couple of rounds here at home and watch some other teams play. I mean, they'll jump on a bandwagon quick. And here's the other thing. The favorites don't always get the love, especially if the underdog can go out there and swing with the big guys for a decent amount of the game. That's something UCSD is going to be playing for on Thursday against Michigan, is winning over that neutral crowd. Tonight, I think San Diego State's got the neutral crowd across the board, just because so many people are upset that North Carolina made the tournament. And I think North Carolina, obviously is going to have a chip on their shoulder with the fact that everybody and their brother is telling them they don't deserve to be there. That could go a long way, too. I think a lot of Aztec fans are afraid of that. I'm not afraid of that as much, but I'm not an alumni. I mean, I'm an Aztec fan, grew up here in San Diego. I obviously want the Aztecs to win, but, I'm not a big believer in I'm not too worried about that. You got better metrics than them. You've beaten better teams than them. You got to go out there and take care of business. You can't focus on things like that. What their mindset might be. As long as you're worried about yourself and you're locked in on your own common goal, you're going to be okay. So if San Diego State wins this game, great. If they lose this game, was it a successful season? I mean, I think it's successful every time you make the NCAA tournament, but honestly, I think where the San Diego State program is at, I think, and the way that they started the year by beating Creighton and Houston and playing the tough competition that they've played and the talent that they have, the fact that they didn't win the Mountain West Conference outright and the fact that they didn't win the Mountain West Conference tournament, I think are, unsuccessful for San Diego State for the program that they are. Now, I think making the first four and then not winning the first game, I wouldn't necessarily be super stoked about hanging banners for that. This program's had a lot more success than that. I think the standard's a lot higher, and I think these guys can accomplish more. And with the talent that they have, I think they can. So hopefully we're not having that conversation tomorrow about whether or not this is a successful season for San Diego State or not. I'm leaning towards kind of, but not really. I think they're better. I think their program I think the program that San Diego State has built has graduated from just making the NCAA tournament and being satisfied with that. I think they made a lot of great strides with the young players. But to be honest with you, it's probably not something that should be cheered too much. I mean, they made the tournament. Great. They should be making it every year. Now, their biggest challenge is going to be keeping a lot of these players like a Magoon Guath. And Magoon Guath is an X factor in tonight's game. Here's what Brian Dutcher had to say about the status of Magoon Guath yesterday.
Magoon is our freshman big. He was freshman of the year in the Mountain West Conference, defensive player of the year in the Mountain West Conference. And he's been out of action since February 22nd, I believe. So basically 6 games. He got hurt 2 minutes into the Utah State game. So now he practiced full yesterday, limited reps, but full go. And so our intention is to have him on the court tomorrow and see what kind of difference he'll make for the Aztecs.
I don't know if he's being coy about it or not, but that's the interesting thing from Brian Dutcher. I mean, obviously you can't expect, he's not going to be at full strength, right? So Magoon Guath's not going to be at full strength tonight for San Diego State, but he will be out there, and they're going to let him go out there and play. And hopefully he can make an impact. And he might be able to go out there and just do enough. I mean, at least, even a 50 to 75% Magoon Guath is a major add for the Aztecs against North Carolina. And they're going to need him tonight against a very talented North Carolina team. Despite the metrics that they have, they're still very good. And as Steve Fisher said earlier, they're going to move the ball up and down the court. And they got to be worried of that. I think the defense is going to play well, though, but they're going against an offensive firepower. Can they neutralize RJ Davis of North Carolina, who's averaging 17 points per game? And how does the return of Magoon Guath impact this game? Those are 2 major questions heading into tonight at 6:10 on True TV of whether or not San Diego State or North Carolina is going to play Ole Miss. And I think whoever wins this game, San Diego State or Ole Miss, has an opportunity to be, or San Diego State or North Carolina has the opportunity to make this thing run to the Sweet 16. There's always one team in the first 4 that usually does some serious damage in the NCAA tournament. We've even seen 2 teams make it to the Final Four with Virginia Commonwealth and UCLA. Not too long ago, UCLA. So you never know. This might be the little springboard that they need to push through to the next couple of rounds. But it should be a fun game tonight. Obviously, the biggest strengths of both teams, San Diego State's defense, North Carolina's offense. That's something to watch for. We're going to talk more about that in the 1 o'clock hour as we preview San Diego State and North Carolina, and get a real deeper dive and get you everything you need to know before the game tonight at 6:10. Want to get back to your phone calls, too. If you want to join the show today, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. You watching the game somewhere, or do you got to stay at home if you're an Aztec fan? That is our question of the day of Do You Know Ball? Can you watch a game like this in a high-leverage game, important game in the general public, or do you want to watch it by yourself? We'll answer that question later on, see if I know ball or you guys know ball on that. Plus, there's an interesting thing that happened in over the weekend with all of these tournament seedings. Happened in the NIT and the CBI, making me ask, are you good? We're going to talk about that. We'll look at the tournament field, but we'll also talk a little bit of Padres. Yuli Gurriel supposed to be making this team, according to Kevin Acee. Had a good day yesterday. And you want to hear what Mike Schultz had to say about Yuli Gurriel after the game when we come back on the Braden Surprenant Show, San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. 10:38 on a Tuesday morning. I should have paid attention to the Kelly Danick weather yesterday. I didn't know it was raining last night. I didn't know it was going to rain last night. Did anybody know it was going to rain last night? Was I just the only one caught off guard? Me and everybody else at the Poway Sportsplex? Having to play in slop and in the rain last night? It was a miserable experience. Miserable experience. Still had a fun time, but it's not, not the ideal conditions for a for playing softball game yesterday. We're going to talk more about the Aztecs and whether or not this is a successful season. And I got a buddy that's an Aztec fan. He's in the chat sometimes. Sushi Sam. It was a rebuilding year with 6 freshmen and sophomore playing significant minutes, and your best player not playing at all. Making the tourney this year was always the goal. For years where over 75% of our team aren't 18 to 20 years old in a game dominated by 23 to 26-year-olds, first 4 is a good season. I mean, if your expectations at the beginning of the season where we just want to make at least the first 4 and if we lose, we're okay with it, then it is a successful season. And okay with not winning the Mountain West tournament or the Mountain West championship, then sure, go ahead. Hang the banner for a successful season, 2024, 2025. But for a program that's gone to the Final Four and for a program that got invited to the Players Tournament and beat Houston and Creighton and had some really good wins at the beginning of the season and scheduled as tough as they did, obviously you want to have the glass half full as much as you can. But if the expectations were to make it to the first 4 and lose, then it would be a successful season. But I don't think that's any of San Diego State's fans' expectations if I asked it to them in November of this year. Hey, you're just going to make the first 4, but you're going to lose. You're going to be okay with that? I mean, as the season progresses, I guess you can alter those expectations. I mean, you could be satisfied, I think, with the season. I wouldn't necessarily consider that a success. Not for the program that they are right now. And we'll see what they do tonight. I mean, honestly, if they win, if they make it to, I think they have to beat Ole Miss for it to be a successful season. Are you satisfied with them making the NCAA tournament? Yes. It's satisfying. Anytime you make the NCAA tournament, you've achieved a goal. But for where the program's at, I mean, this is not, you're not in a one bid league deal. But that's my take on that. And it depends how you define success. Speaking of success, San Diego Padres are getting a lot of success out of Yuli Gurriel, at least recently. As pointed out in Kevin Acey's article about giving him the benefit of the doubt for the season and potentially making the team, it's almost like a foregone conclusion that he's going to be on the team, which was news to us yesterday when we talked about that particular piece in the article. And then he goes out yesterday and has a great day for the San Diego Padres. 40 years old, Yuli Gurriel. Now, whether or not he should make this team is an interesting question and a topic of debate. I don't particularly think it's worth it at the end of the year, to potentially give up on maybe a Tyler Wade or an Eggy Rosario. But yesterday, in Yuli Gurriel's credit, went out there and went 2 for 3 with a run scored, drove in 4 runs with his home run in the second inning. And here's what Mike Schilt had to say about Yuli performance yesterday.
What would it mean to the Padres to have a Yuli Gurriel who can hit like that?
Quite a bit. You're talking about a pretty much a definition of professional hitter. We've seen that recently. Yuli comes in, by far the reputation for sure, winning player. Came in, fantastic shape, moving great, is on everything. Just takes great at bats and just has a great presence about him. And I just loved our bats today. Everything middle of the field, good approach, runner scoring position. Just Yuli did a great job, and also love the fact you're down 4, and shoot, man, guys came back and that grit squad showing up. So Yuli, tremendous at bats.
How different does Luis Ariz look to you physically versus last summer?
Dramatically. Well, end of the year. When we first got him, he looks like he looked when we got him. Everybody remembers the game he had.
I talked about Yuli Gurriel before they went into Luis Ariz. So, I mean, very interesting, where they're at right now with this particular instance. I mean, Yuli Gurriel looks like he's playing his way on the team. He's hitting 296 in spring training, 840 OPS. I don't like looking at spring training numbers too much, but again, I've already had, we talked about it last week. And context is key. I posted that clip on social media afterwards. I mean, Xander Bogaerts, again, in spring training is putting up the numbers that he usually puts up in a regular season. And people are upset that he's not doing it enough. And I put the clip out there defending Xander Bogaerts, and somebody goes like, I can't believe you're viewing statistics for spring training. Meanwhile, the same guy was hyping up Gavin Sheets for the numbers that he put up in spring training. Look, the spring training numbers count or they don't. You either weigh into those or you don't. There's no in between with that. A lot of these players need to show that they can play at a high level. And sometimes the spring training numbers are what does it for them. But to me, evaluate the process over the results. We talked about that yesterday. And there's really no more that you have to say on that. But it looks like Yuli Gurriel is probably going to be on this team. And we got 9 days left for them to put that roster out. There's a lot of interesting battles out there in Padres land for the position players. And I think this competition is another incentive for why this team is going to be a playoff team in 2025. A lot of people want to believe that because they're buying into the doom and gloom of what happened in LA with them with them having a big offseason after winning a World Series and everything like that. But you don't have to worry about them till the playoffs anyway. Padres got a good team assembled. Is it disheartening that they didn't make a bunch of moves in the offseason? Yeah, probably. But that doesn't mean that they're not still a good team. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that these guys are coming back from injury. And we'll talk about that with Manny Machado later on in the show. 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. We want to get to Kevin in Chula Vista. Kevin, what's going on a Tuesday? You excited for Aztec basketball tonight?
Yeah, Braden, it's the best time of the sports year for, I think, most of us that pay attention. So, of course, it's this is it, man. This is what we wait for. At least I do. I don't know about you guys, but it's a great time. A couple of things. First of all, to go back to the opening of Major League Baseball in the Orient, in this case, the conundrum that baseball puts itself in, and the reason why they've got to do it, obviously, for 2 weeks in advance, you're sending two teams on the other side of the earth. There's a 16 to 18-hour time difference. The jet lag that these guys have to recover from, I wouldn't want to do it if I was a ball player, but that's just me. But that's kind of where they stick themselves at, and it's kind of unfortunate because, how many people really pay attention to this series unless you're a Cubs or a Dodger fan? It's kind of a shame because of the time difference and what have you. So that's
I didn't watch anything last night. I had no interest in waking up this morning to watch it. I barely woke up last year to watch the Padres play it because it's at 3:15 in the freaking morning. And that's ruining our opening day because we got to, sacrifice for the betterment of Major League Baseball. But the reality is everybody in this particular case is sacrificing. What's your second take, Kevin?
Yeah, second take, just getting back to the Aztecs and the question of the day about the success or failure of the season. I have watched as an alumni and a fan since the late 70s. So I've had the opportunity to see a lot of great players come and go. My measuring stick is a little bit different because of the time. And in watching all of this year's team just does not pass my particular eye test in that there are so many shortcomings, a lot of which are, of course, accustomed to having such a young team. And so I think they're a little bit overrated in some respects. I expected to see a lot better maturity in playing come from Farrell Compton. I don't think that's worked out quite like I had thought. His lack of free throw expertise is an absolute dead spot in the lineup, as a lot of them are. There's just a lot of fundamental little basketball strategic issues with this particular squad this year that they will have to address, I think, in the off season to come. They're not as proficient in a lot of areas that they need to be. We'll see what happens in the tournament. Anything can happen. They're going to face a super motivated North Carolina squad that, as you pointed out, they've got a huge chip on their shoulder. If I was a North Carolina player right now, I want to absolutely shut the world up and shove it back into their face for the remarks that have been made about North Carolina, all of which are probably deserved.
I agree, Kevin. I appreciate the phone call, and thanks again. Enjoy the Aztec game tonight. I mean, yeah, I think you have to evaluate the success of the season based on what the expectations were at the beginning of the season. I think the expectations at the beginning of the season were a lot more than just making the first four and losing. I think there's a lot of positives you could take out of the season without calling it a major successful season. And the Aztecs' biggest challenge once their season is over is trying to keep Miles Bird and trying to keep Magoon Guath, and then trying to go find some help in the portal again and trying to compete with the big boys. I mean, this is the game that you have to play now. I mean, it's just you have to go pay to play. And not only do you have to pay to play with other players, you got to do it with your own players too. That's the challenge that you have to face. And the cool part about it is you got Brian Dutcher in charge, and that guy is unfazed by it all. Good phone call by Kevin on a lot of that stuff. We'll talk more about that later on. Working on the open for this, but we've talked about it. I've had to throw out the question of, are you good? I have to say this right now because, we're going to do it yesterday, but we had a lot of breaking news go down. But there's a lot of stuff that happens in sports where it's just like, it's a head scratcher, or it's like, I can't believe they just did that. Or are you good, dude? Like yesterday, Dan Hurley, or over the weekend, Dan Hurley upset about the way that Creighton finished the game when they dunked on him. They had a huge dunk at the end of the game and kind of over exaggerated the dunk. After Dan Hurley, the last time he played Creighton, really popped off and was yelling at the fans 2 rings. I mean, at that point, if you can't dish it out, I mean, if you can't accept it, don't dish it out. Are you good? Here's one for the NCAA. Did you guys hear this story? I don't know if anybody noticed the other brackets, the CBI and the NIT. There's a bunch of different tournaments now. Well, there's always been, but they have the CBI and they have the NIT. And they also have this new tournament called the Crown Tournament, which Fox puts on to put a bunch of, mid-level, mid-majors programs in there that didn't make the NIT, or the ones that, basically paid for them to be in over the NIT. It's basically watering down all these deals, whatever. But UC Riverside, when they announced both the CBI and the NIT, were in both tournaments. They were listed to play in both the CBI and in the NIT. And you're throwing, well, are they going to play in both? And just like if they lose in the NIT, they're going to go play in the CBI because they had a bye in the CBI. And then you come to realize that the NCAA just fumbled the bag on this particular case. So not only did UC Riverside get placed in the NIT and the CBI, the NCAA didn't think Riverside was going to take the NIT bid because they thought they were locked into the CBI, which is a lower level tournament. So what the NCAA did was they called South Alabama, and they asked South Alabama if they wanted to be in the NIT, which is, for South Alabama, that's not a bad draw. Get some money in it to go play in the NIT. It's still a good tournament. It's probably the, 1A, 1B in terms of the tournaments behind the NCAA tournament. We'll see how the Crown one is, but it's a good tournament to be in. South Alabama got a call from the NCAA inviting them to the NIT at 9:30 9:30 a couple of nights ago because UC Riverside was locked into the CBI. They were told they were 100% in. Now you guys are in. You're going to take the bid. You're in. NCAA called back an hour later to say they no longer had a spot for them after head coach Richie Riley had already told his team they were in. Terrible. Statement from Dan Grevitt of the NIT. After the NIT bracket was released Sunday evening, it was brought to the NIT's attention that one of the teams scheduled to participate in the tournament had also committed to a non-NCAA affiliated postseason event. In an effort to secure another participating team, the NIT prematurely extended an invitation to the South Alabama Jaguars prior to learning that the original team chose to accept its invitation to the NIT. Regrettably, the NIT rescinded its invitation to South Alabama. We understand the emotional impact this confusion created, and we sincerely apologize to South Alabama head coach Richie Riley and all the student athletes for the error. Richie Riley goes, he quote tweets it going, "A meaningless apology to the most meaningful group of players I've ever coached. What they did to us last night is inexcusable. These guys in our locker room don't deserve this, and it's sad your idea of making this right is a copy paste apology." NIT, are you good? UCR, are you good? Why are you accepting multiple tournament bids? Unbelievable. At that point, once the NIT invited South Alabama, they should have called up Riverside and been like, you snooze, you lose, man. Go play in the CBI. Unbelievable. I've made a case for Kyle Hart to be the number 5 starter. I'm going to play devil's advocate. Why Stephen Kolek should be the number 5 starter when we come back. Setting Someone Sports Station, 97 through the Fan. Starting on hour number 2 on the Braden Surprenant Show. Big game tonight for San Diego State, starting their NCAA tournament track. I've had to answer this question a couple of times today for people that don't normally fill out brackets. I fill out brackets all the time. I used to fill out brackets when I was a kid. I love brackets. I'll make tournaments. So I'm such an advocate for expanding the college football playoff. Not an advocate for expanding the NCAA tournament, though. For many reasons, multiple reasons. The hearsay of all the Power Four takeover of college athletics I am against, even though the university I attended is currently in the Power Four. Who knows how much longer that will be the case if they make it a Power Two, but I digress on those particular college topics. But I will answer it again for anybody that's driving around that is curious about this, or anybody in the chat about filling out a bracket. No, if you're in a bracket pool of some kind, whether it be for fun or maybe more than fun, whether it be with your office or your gym or your friends or whatever it may be, no, you do not have to have your bracket done before the first 4 games are over. Or before they start, sorry. You do not have to have those games done. You do not have to have your bracket done before they start the games later on this afternoon. Most of the time, I don't even pay attention too much to the first 4 spots at that particular spot. Just because when I fill out my brackets, I can kind of assume who I think is going to win, but you don't need to fill them out.
Braden, it's interesting you bring up that these 4 games aren't part of the bracket. I got a similar situation. I know nobody cares about your fantasy league, but it relates to this point. I'm in a fantasy baseball league, and we couldn't get all 12 people on the calendar at the same time until this coming Sunday. So we had a real Major League Baseball game that started last night, another one coming up tonight. Nobody has teams yet. So these games aren't part of our fantasy baseball season.
I think that's fair. 100% fair. I think you should draft. Well, see, I've never played fantasy baseball. I can't get into.
It's great.
It's too many days, dude. I don't know how you keep up with it. I don't know how you keep up with it with everything that you already have going on. And then you do fantasy on this. I don't know how you do it. I could never do. I get after like 2 months. It's just, I forgot about fantasy football. I mean, it's our fantasy baseball. I got everything to do with USD throughout the rest of the school year. And then over the summer is Padre games, show, plus coaching high school football. I don't know how you pay. You got to worry about games during the day. Games at night, random. I don't know how you guys do it. But I tip my cap to you fantasy baseball players. With fantasy football, I've always been an advocate for you better draft like the last possible day that you could. That's Sunday before the league starts. Like the Sunday of Labor Day weekend should be when you draft. If you draft earlier than that, you're asking for trouble. You're asking for an injury in a preseason game. You're asking for your first round pick to not even play in the first game. Draft as late as humanly possible. But anyway, back to the brackets. No, you do not have to have your brackets done before the first game today. You need them done by Thursday before they tip off Thursday morning. And I think the first game Thursday morning is at 9:15. And classic NCAA tournament, specifically TV companies, they have to make it an 8-9 matchup as the 9:15 game, the first game that's going to go final for your bracket. So it's going to wipe out half the field of everybody that fills out a bracket, because Louisville and Creighton is literally a toss-up. That is a coin flip game that's not going to matter because Auburn's going to beat either of those teams anyway. But that's the first game. So you don't have to have your bracket done before the first game this afternoon. And I got to look at the, because San Diego State, I think, is the second of the 2 games today. Yeah, the first game is at 3:40, St. Francis and Alabama State in the South region. And the winner of that gets to lose to Auburn. And Auburn's really good. They got great guard play. Just ask their coach, Bruce Pearl, about their guard play. Don't actually do that. He said something on air that he probably shouldn't have said. But anyway, game coming up later on today. I asked the question for the question of the day that people are voting on right now on social media. And if you haven't voted on social media, put your vote in the chat as well. Can you watch your favorite team at a watch party or public setting for a big game? And you're not attending said game. I mean, we have If some guy in there just, questioning the question. Get that. Come on, man. Put the fries in the bag. Big games. Can you watch it in the general public? Like, I watched the San Diego State run to the Final Four. San Diego State's not my alma mater, but it's still a team I root for. It's a little bit different for me watching them in a public setting. But I cannot watch TCU football in a public setting. I can't do it. No, absolutely not. I will go berserk during a football game. And the last thing I want to do is deal with some fan of the other team that walks by. Or I'm starting to see this more now, and they actually piss me off more than just the opposing fan, are the gamblers. Just the people that have just money on every single game, talking S to the people that actually like support the team. It's like, come on, buddy, just win your bet and move on. But the public setting thing. I mean, how many times do you watch Georgia at a public watch party?
Are you saying this for like just a regular season TCU game?
I mean, even those I just don't really want, unless it's like a TCU level event. But like the big games, I'm talking about like a college football playoff game or a national championship
for that, or a playoff game for a Major League Baseball team or an NFL team you root for. I gotta watch it at home.
I gotta watch it at home.
I can't deal with people hammering me, and then you get a bunch of people who haven't been following the team. Like, so tell me about Fernando and what kind of season. Like, dude, I don't have time to explain to you Tatis's season. Right, I'm watching the game.
I hosted a when TCU made the college football playoff. I hosted a kind of like a Super Bowl level party for the playoff game against Michigan for the Fiesta Bowl. I had like 30-something people over at my house, did a brisket. It was fun. It was a good time.
But that was your decision, your call.
It was. And then I realized I didn't watch like half the game because I was too busy entertaining everybody or like working on stuff.
Parties for the same reason.
I mean, I will go to Super Bowl parties if I don't really care about the matchup, or I'll have people over. It's just like, okay, all right. But if San Diego ever got an NFL team back, like Jackson Merrill wanted to have, and they made the Super Bowl, there's no way I'd be able to watch that at a Super Bowl party. No way. I'd have to go watch somewhere alone by myself. But if you want to weigh in, it's on 97 through the Fan SD. You can also follow me on social media at @B_SURP, at BSurp. I got a lot of videos that I'm going to post later on today from a couple of recent shows, some takes that we'll have out there. We are going to continue to put content out on my social media platforms, on Instagram, whether it be Reels or on Twitter, and on TikTok. I will dabble in that a little bit, although the majority of my following is on Instagram, but that seems to be my target audience of people my age. Not as many on TikTok. That's kind of a younger crowd. I don't really post on Facebook at all. That's kind of an older crowd. And then Twitter is just its own kind of deal. But you can follow me at B_SURP. If you haven't done so already on the YouTube page, give us a like. Really helps us out. Spread the word. Get people into our show as we try to grow the show here on the Braden Surprenant show on middays now from 10 to 2. Appreciate all of you. I mentioned before, and I've talked about it already, Kyle Hart, I think, should be the number 5 starter. With his experience, that kind of fiery edge that he brings, that he's already started to bring. I loved his introductory press conference. Not really a press conference, but more of a press scrum in the clubhouse about talking, using we, and knowing the Padres history and wanting to take down the Dodgers. I love the swagger he had when he stuck up for his KBO teammates and some altercation with the other team's pitcher. The way that he has been able to throw already in spring, with some of the stuff that he has. And even though he's only pitched in one game, I think he's done really well. And I think he's got a lot of upside. And with a little bit more experience, I think he's definitely the right role for the number 5 spot in the rotation. AJ Cassaville had an article today about Stephen Kolek, who really is the only other competition, I would say, for Kyle Hart right now for the number 5 starter. And so I'm going to play a little devil's advocate for just in a sense of why Stephen Kolek should get an opportunity. Now, I think for all of these reasons that Kolek should be the number 5 starter, it gives you reasons for why he should be part of the rotation either later on in the season or in future years for the Padres. I think this really solidifies why the Padres picked him up in the Rule 5 draft. Kolek is a right-handed pitcher with a 5-pitch mix, began his career as a starter, then was a reliever for a little bit for the Mariners before coming back over to before coming to the Padres, where he served as reliever and now is trying to be turned back into a starting pitcher. He's making that transition back into the starting role, which is very much like what Michael King was. And Michael King, obviously a little bit more advanced in a sense of having logged more big-time innings with the Yankees before arriving in the Juan Soto trade. But there's a lot of similarities between Stephen Kolek and Michael King that AJ Cassaville did the research on and broke out. And I think that's a big reason why the future is great for a guy like Stephen Kolek and the San Diego Padres. He's got the same 5-pitch mix, and he has been using Michael King as a resource, who's coming off of a season which he made 30 starts with a 2.95 ERA and finished 7th in the NL Cy Young Award voting. Michael King says about Stephen Kolek, he's a guy that's really trying to learn. It's refreshing to have a guy come up to me and say, you sequence well, you read swings, what you got for me, what can I do better? You know, Kolek is picking the brains of the rotation. You know, the pitch mix that Kolek has is very similar to King, so he naturally can confide in King and kind of pick his brain to be a better starting pitcher, which I think is great news for the Padres in the future, especially with the fact that Michael King and Dylan Cease are both on their final deals of their contract. Very similar arsenals between Kolek and Michael King. And Kolek's investment into this is starting to pay off. Not only is he a contender for that 5th spot, as mentioned before, but he was one of the long shots, and he's actually looked the best in spring training so far. He's had 3 outings, and he's only allowed 1 run on 5 hits across 9, and he's also been excellent on the backfields, which was no surprise to King, who saw the potential in Kolek as a Rule 5 draft pick last summer. As he said to AJ Cassaville about, you know, his sequencing wasn't very good. There were so many opportunities last year and even this year in spring where he has had the opportunity to get the strikeout and he gets soft contact. So it's really just about sequencing in a way to allow for swing and miss. And it's not just Michael King that he's picking the brain of. You know, Ruben Niebla is actively encouraging collaboration among pitchers. You see Yu Darvish do it all the time. Not only is he teaching the younger pitchers, but he also gets a lot of information from other guys too, where he can adjust his pitches. And that collaboration is going to make this unit so good. And it's the big reason why it makes the pitching staff great. And so Kolek has already started to talk with guys like Nick Pivetta about his swing and miss and some of the techniques that Darvish has with his spin and Joe Musgrove with his game planning. I mean, all the starters for the San Diego Padres are molding Stephen Kolek into a little version of themselves in all of the best ways. I still think he probably needs a little bit more time. But I think the Padres are going to have to need Stephen Kolek at some point during the year. It's going to take more than just the 5 pitchers. And I think Kyle Hart will start the season off as the number 5 starter. Although right now it's very, very much 1 and 2 between him and Stephen Kolek. I think Stephen Kolek might be able to start a little bit in the bullpen. You know, I don't necessarily want to see both him and Randy Vasquez in the minor leagues to start the season. But I think Stephen Kolek's got a good chance at being a part of this rotation at some point in time. I don't think it's going to be at the beginning part of the year. I think he might start in the bullpen. And then as the first couple of weeks play out and the first couple of trips through the rotation play out, Stephen Kolek might be in a position to get a couple of starts and then help this pitching staff out. But I tell you what, the future of Stephen Kolek right now is looking very bright. The way that he is putting in the time and the effort, and he's building his arsenal, and he's doing a really good job of trying to develop into that starting pitcher that he started off as in Seattle before they made him a relief pitcher and before the Padres acquired him in the Rule 5 draft. So, yes, I still think Kyle Hart should be the number 5 starter for the Padres to start the season. But with Stephen Kolek learning from some of the best in the rotation, and with him learning the pitch sequencing, and with him, dabbling in some of the spin from Yu Darvish and from game planning with Joe Musgrove, and he has had success already in spring training, I think Stephen Kolek is a bright future piece for the San Diego Padres. Again, it's adding guys in different ways that AJ Preller's been able to do. It's not just buying, the number 1 guy on the market in free agency. They have found so many different players in different ways to help this organization. So I mean, with the way that the starting pitching plays out, and with the way that they have, some limited time in terms of whether or not they're going to keep some of these players, Stephen Kolek might be the answer for them in the next couple of years. Not to say he's an ace or anything like that, but I think he's going to have a good career with the San Diego Padres. It's just not the timing's not there yet, I don't think, for Stephen Kolek. Gavin Sheets continues to have his stock rise as he put together another good game yesterday. It was overshadowed by Yuli Gurriel. Yuli Gurriel had a better game, obviously. Gavin Sheets continues to put himself in a good spot. He is now hitting at a 311 clip in spring training with 1123 OPS, left-handed bat, DH, but can play a lot of different positions, outfield and infield. According to Kevin Acee, almost a shoe-in for the roster already. But what has been some of the reason for the success for Gavin Sheets? Well, Tony Gwynn Jr. and Chris Ello and Matt Scraby were able to catch up with Gavin Sheets yesterday, and he talked a lot about, kind of his approach and everything like that. We'll hear from Gavin Sheets when we come back on the Padres' new potential left-handed DH on the Braden Surprenant Show on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Well, tell everybody that we are going to be at Dave & Buster's coming up on Friday. Joe 97 through the fan at Dave & Buster's in Mission Valley. Next Friday, or this Friday, as we broadcast live all day long in celebration of the biggest college hoops tournament of the year. Ben and Woods kick things off at 6 a.m., followed by myself at 10 and Gwen and Chris at 2. And then we will wrap up the day with Matt Scraby on the Scraby Show at 6 o'clock. There will be a breakfast burrito station, drink specials on mimosas, Bloody Marys and beer throughout the day, a basketball shooting competition, and hourly raffle giveaways. Join us at Dave & Buster's at 2931 Camino del Rio North next Friday for a full day of fun with your favorite fan talk shows. Should be a good time. If the Aztecs win tonight against North Carolina, they'll be playing right in the middle of the day on Friday while we're out there. So hopefully that is the case. Aztecs play tonight at 6:10 officially. I'm sure they'll tip off a little bit later than that. They'll be behind the other game that is in action tonight, which will be the Alabama State St. Francis game, which will tip off at 3:40 on True TV. True TV's got all 4 of the first 4 games. Alabama State St. Francis today at 3:40, San Diego State North Carolina tonight at 6:10, and then tomorrow it's American versus Mount St. Mary's at 3:40 in a battle of 16 seeds, and Texas and Xavier at 6:10 tomorrow to start college basketball's March Madness. So we'll see what we got with the Aztecs tonight. They're a 4.5-point underdog. They're the biggest underdog of the first 4. North Carolina's got the biggest spread right now, although the other ones are 3.5, and 2.5. I want to talk a little bit about Gavin Sheets and the way that he's been able to play his way onto this team. He has done a great job in spring training. He has tried to make the most of all of his opportunities, and some of them obviously starting off slower than others, but he has really gotten off to a great start and has probably played his way onto this team and could be a nice asset for the Padres in 2025. Left-handed bat off the bench that can put the ball over the fence, and a guy that can play both the infield and corner outfield spots is a good asset to have, especially if he can go up there and hit and consistently put up good at-bats. Gavin Sheets did talk with Tony Gwynn Jr. and Chris Ello yesterday on Gwynn and Chris and talked a little bit about what the opportunities were that the Padres were going to give him when they initially signed the contract during the offseason.
Nothing was promised to me, nor did I expect anything to be promised. I didn't want any false promises or anything like that. But what was promised was a chance to compete, and I wasn't afraid of competition. I wanted to come in and be a part of a winning franchise. I watched what they did last year. I know the talent that they have here. I know the superstars they have here, and for me, it was coming in and fitting in and being a guy to add some depth.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's done so far in spring training. Now it is spring training, but he's done a good job, and he adds the depth, and that's the depth that you need for the San Diego Padres. I think the biggest thing and asset for Gavin Sheets was the fact that Tony La Russa, put in a call to Mike Schilt about you can win with this guy. I mean, you can say what you want about Tony La Russa and how things ended in Chicago and everything like that. The guy has won the second most games in Major League Baseball as a manager. He does know what he's talking about. The team that the Padres are putting together is good. They're doing it the right way, and they're saying the right things, and they're, kind of sneaking up on everybody. Gavin Sheets got off to a slower start, but then really started to hit his stride. He talks about the importance of that when trying to make the team, and we'll get his answer from Grit and Chris when we come back. The Braden Surprenant Show rolls on 97.3 The Fan, San Diego's #1 sports station. 11:33 on a Tuesday. Itching to get there for the San Diego State, North Carolina basketball game coming up at 6:10 on True TV. We'll get a full preview of that coming up at 1 o'clock. Coming up in the next hour, why a healthy Manny Machado is more important than any offseason that the Padres have put together. I think Manny Machado, and he had to sit down with Kevin Acee. It was a great article, talking about chasing down, a lot of personal accolades in Padres history, but more importantly in baseball history. The numbers that he's been able to put up while being hurt, finally feeling healthy, and the good news that it is for the Padres, but also why just having a lot of healthy players for the Padres is going to be a major difference and a big reason why they brought in some of these players. Have a little optimism, especially in the chat, man. Jeez. Chat's been negative today. Be excited. Be happy. Sun is out. We're closer to opening day. Spring's right around the corner, which means you could be hopeful about the Padres season and for what they're doing. I like a lot of moves that they're making and everything that's going on. I like the attitude. I like the mental makeup. I like it a lot better than it was, the last couple of years. I think what they're doing is a great job. I think a lot of the players that they brought in are great too. And I think they have made the most of their opportunities, like a Gavin Sheets, who has been given limited opportunities but has tried to make the most of them. And he was on with Gwen and Chris yesterday, and he talked a little bit about that slow start that has now turned into a lot better of a spring performance as he tries to make this Major League Baseball club a club that he said, I will do whatever it takes in order to be at the Major League level.
Come in and you want numbers right away. You want to make a team right away, and it's a different spot than I've been in the last couple of years. Yeah. And so you start to press a little bit, but at the same time, it's like you want to dive into these guys. You want to see their ideas. You still want to work on stuff. You know that in the long run, when everything clicks and you make these changes, everything's going to, in the long run, it's going to benefit you. And so it's kind of that fine line of like, man, I had a great, from 8 to 12 o'clock today, my work was unbelievable. And then you go and you roll over one at bat, and you're like, just don't
make it a big thing.
Don't panic.
Right.
Don't panic. Like,
it's so hard to do,
it's
though.
So
right?
hard. It's like, man,
yeah.
I had 4 hours of unbelievable. I had 100 swings today that were really good, and then my one at bat today, I rolled over. I punched down. It's like, how do you not go back and change everything? But no, I stuck with it, and just stuck with these guys and loved what they were doing, and then obviously you start to see some results and start to be like, all right, this is why I was buying in.
That is so hard as a player. That is so hard as a player. That is hard as a coach to try to tell your player, don't change it. You're doing a great job. He's thinking about it's the pressure. That's what makes being a pinch hitter so difficult in baseball. That's what makes making a team in baseball so difficult. This is a sport of failure. I mean, it's a sport of failure. You need, 300 at-bats minimum before you can even determine how good a player really is at the dish. I mean, that's like the rule of thumb is 300 at-bats, and that's still a small sample size. I mean, it's like trying to make a high school team in like a 3-day tryout. I mean, you got no what the evaluation is insane. And that's why baseball is so difficult. I mean, this guy, for his livelihood, is trying to make a major league team, putting in hours of work and time. He might get one at bat. And even though he had a good approach and everything like that, rolls over on one, and that's his only at bat of the day. It's so hard not to go back and change everything you just worked on. That's another big reason why these results you could take with a grain of salt. I mean, it's about the process. We talked about that almost the entire show yesterday, about process over results and about how important it is to have a good culture in the clubhouse. So even though it's like he's having a pretty good spring, and even though some of the other players are not, I mean, you can only look so far into the overall results. You got to watch them putting it together. You got to watch them put the process together and getting ready for opening day. And even though Gavin Sheets has had some of the results, I mean, the process has been there. The guy's working his tail off to make this team, and I think he's going to make it. I mean, we could talk about Kevin Acey's article and whatever it is, but you know, they've made a lot of their determinations already. It seems like, with Hayward going to be the everyday starter in left field, with obviously Elias Diaz going to be the everyday catcher. That was not too crazy of an assumption. And then guys like Jose Iglesias and Gavin Sheets probably going to make the opening day roster. I mean, the thing that was the craziest to me was the Yuli Gurriel potential move for the Padres. But I guess if they do that, they're just willing to part ways with a player like Eggy Rosario. I mean, guys like Connor Joe are battling for this team right now, and he's having a great spring training. And he signed a contract, but he's got options left. So there's a lot of decisions that still need to be made right now. And even though yesterday, off the report from the weekend was Iglesias, Gurriel, and Sheets are going to make the team with a backup catcher, and then that leaves one spot. I mean, that could change within a week. That could change with injuries. That could change with a ton of different opportunities and situations at spring training. We got 7 games left in spring training, and one of the days is a split squad, as we're 9 games out, or 9 days out from opening day. Well, we will be at Baja Ricks leading up to first pitch. I mean, we'll be at Baja Ricks at this point 9 days from now, leading up to first pitch. I mean, this will be the end of the show, getting you into the Padres pregame show with Sam Levitt, feeling that energy in the ballpark, because you always get playoff energy in the ballpark on opening day. It's a special thing. It's a special time in the United States. I don't know why it's not a national holiday. It should be. It should be a national holiday, and it should be played here in the United States to kick the season off. Last night was the first game in Major League Baseball. I mean, there's already been a game in 2025. Last night, the Dodgers went out and beat the Chicago Cubs in a real game. I know it's not crazy for us to understand, because last year at this time, we were at 7 Mile Casino at a watch party at 3 a.m, watching the Padres play the Dodgers, watching Jake Cronenworth's glove break. But we've already had one game because the Dodgers beat the Cubs 4-1 in the Tokyo series. Now, I understand why they're doing it for marketing and everything like that, and both teams have a lot of good Japanese players. But it's great for Japan. But I don't understand why those games have to count. I don't understand why that has to be opening day to start the entire year. I mean, what they're asking these guys to do is relatively insane. And it's not just Major League Baseball. I mean, the NFL, I mean, how many games do they have internationally now in the National Football League? They got games in Germany, and they got games obviously in England, and they got games in Brazil now, and they've had games in Mexico City, and they're moving games. They're going to have a game in Australia. And they're all games that count. They're not preseason games to showcase the NFL. Meanwhile, you never gave Hawaii a game aside from the Pro Bowl. They were tired of just watching the Pro Bowl every year. They don't have a stadium for it now. But we never get it in return. We never get the best European soccer games. It's not like the Champions League comes out here and participates in the United States. We had the bid for the World Cup, and that's being split with 3 countries out here. I just don't understand why we got to keep doing the international thing, especially to start the season or for regular season games. I mean, the majority of the fans here in the United States for Major League Baseball, like I said, are here in the United States. I know Japan's got a big following now with Shohei Ohtani, but do we really need to start the season in Japan? Do we really need to start the season at 3 a.m. on the Pacific Coast? I guess on the East Coast it's 6 a.m. It's not a big deal for them, but I think to me, I think the international games they've run its course. They continue to add them for the NFL. I mean, what they're asking players to do on these cross-country flights in the middle of the season is insanity. And they talk about player safety and player health. This is more of an NFL thing. But, I mean, good thing you saved everybody from kickoffs, but, we're going to make you fly to, Brazil and play in a game and then come back home and then 2 weeks later play again. And we're going to fly you to Germany and play a game and make you fly all over all over the world to play these football games in all these different parts of the world, to help the brand, to help the shield. I don't get it with baseball either. I could go without the international games that count until we start getting some Champions League games or some of the best soccer in the world. I don't know. That's my thoughts on that. 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. I had no interest in waking up at 3 a.m. to watch the Dodgers. I barely did it last year. And our team was in it. I mean, definitely no Padre fan's going to wake up that unless you were just insistent on being a Dodger hater, which, I'd rather just not pay attention to them. But even if it's any other game, like the Nationals play the Astros today in spring training. If the Nats play the Astros at 3 a.m, is anybody getting up to watch? Probably not. What are the top trending stories in your group text right now? It's a sports thread on the Braden Surprenant Show.
You know that group chat? The one that's always blowing up with the biggest sports takes, debates, and breaking news?
You got barbecue back there, and you didn't invite me?
Yeah, we've got that too. Welcome to the Sports Thread, where we break down the top 5 stories in sports, just like you would with your crew.
Oh, no! Disaster! What a bad idea!
No filters, no silence, just real talk.
Disaster! What a terrible idea. Here's Adam Klug with the sports thread.
What's up, Braden? Let's get right into it.
Number 1.
One of our NL West rivals is in the news as the Giants have sold a 10% ownership stake to a private equity firm called Sixth Street. The piece of equity imputed a $4.2 billion valuation of the franchise. Sixth Street's investment will reportedly go towards upgrades to Oracle Park and the team's spring training facilities, as well as their real estate development across from McCovey Cove. The Giants selling off a 10% equity stake. Big deal, little deal, or no deal?
10% equity stake. It depends on what the deal is on the return to the private equity company, because that's always the big question mark with a lot of these private equity groups getting involved with professional and even college athletics, as I've seen the Big 12 try to add some private equity into their conference. So I think it's a slippery slope all the time. I think it's the risks that are involved, but you know what? They're generating more cash flow for the organization to try to win. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. I mean, they make these moves a lot at the higher up levels. I think people hear private equity and immediately go like it's going to kill the franchise, but it's probably okay for the San Francisco Giants. My question is, I thought they had all this money to spend on free agency and all this other stuff. They haven't spent it yet. Maybe that's just been a lie the last couple of years.
Unless nobody wants to take their money.
That's
Number 2.
The drama surrounding Aaron Rodgers continues as multiple franchises are waiting to hear from the 4-time MVP about his intentions for the upcoming season. Longtime Steelers defensive captain Cam Hayward isn't having it, though. Take a listen to what he said on the Not Just Football podcast.
So if they called you and were like, we need you to follow him into the darkness for a couple days. He says if you come down there with him, he's signing. Are you going to be off the grid for a little bit, go to the darkness and try to get this guy? We need you. You're our best recruiter. I'm about to get to Darius Slay, and it sounds like you recruited him too. So we need you to start recruiting. Get that NIL bag out like you did at Ohio State.
I ain't doing that darkness retreat. I don't need any of that crap. Like, either you want to be a Pittsburgh Steeler or you don't. That's simple. That's the pitch. Like, if you want me to recruit, that's the recruiting pitch. Pittsburgh Steelers, if you want to be part of it, so be it. If you don't, no skin on my back.
I love that answer.
So last week, new Steelers receiver DK Metcalf said, quote, "This is a historic organization. They've done the recruiting before I even got here. So whoever wants to come here and try to win as many games as we can, they can join us. But if not, good luck on the other side."
Wow.
Based on the comments of these two high-profile Steeler players, do you think Rodgers would be a good fit in Pittsburgh?
I already didn't think he was going to be a good fit in Pittsburgh because Aaron Rodgers is such an eye guy, and he's always been an eye guy. And the Steelers don't necessarily have eye guy players. Now, the eye guy players that they have had in the past, they've actually done well with, and they've become eye guys after they left. But when they saw that pairing, I was immediately went with, I can't believe this is the case. I can't believe the Steelers would be interested in even entertaining this question. And as Hayward said right there, his reaction was great. He was just like looking at the camera like, is this guy out of his mind right now? No, I'm not going to do all of this for a 40-something-year-old Aaron Rodgers that is just going to be about himself, that just basically, I know it's the Jets, and the Jets are never really a great franchise, but he put that franchise back 4 or 5 years. I don't know why you would want to make the traditional, quote, deal with the devil to bring Aaron Rodgers in, and I'm especially not doing this whole kiss his ass approach to go be a Steeler. I agree with what he had to say. You either want to be a Steeler or you don't. That's the type of organization that the Pittsburgh Steelers are. Don't get down the rabbit hole with Aaron Rodgers.
Number 3.
Let's check in on Mavs GM Nico Harrison. Are you good, bro? He obviously got skewered for trading away Luka Doncic, but that wasn't his only trade before the deadline. He also sent guard Quentin Grimes in a pick swap for the better of 2 second-round picks to the 76ers for Caleb Martin. The basketball gods continued to throw shade at Nico last night as Grimes scored 46 points and grabbed a career-high 13 boards to go along with 4 assists and 2 steals against Houston. What % chance do you give Nico Harrison of being fired during this offseason?
90. If they're smart, it's like 95. I mean, I don't know how he survives this. He even said it in his press conference announcing the trade. Well, we think this is going to work out, but, I don't know if, me and Jason are going to be here to see it. Jason's like, I didn't sign up for this. This is not what I signed up for. What's that show or what's that movie? How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days or 30 Days, whatever that movie is. That's like the same thing. How to get fired as a general manager in as the least amount of time as possible. Nico is the front runner for that. I mean, what are they doing? Are you good?
Number 4.
Mauricio Pochettino is the new head coach of the U.S. men's national team, and he's embracing the pressure of leading the U.S. into next year's World Cup as the host nation. Pochettino recently said the U.S. men's national team can be the best in the world within 5 to 10 years due to the country's growing investment in soccer. We've obviously seen the popularity here in San Diego with SDFC. Do you agree with Mauricio Pochettino?
I think they have potential to do that. But the thing is like, yes, soccer is growing in the United States. I think the investment in it is obviously growing. I think people that are kind of on the fence are starting to pay attention more. But here's the big thing is they need to get the best athletes in the United States to play soccer over the other sports. And right now in the United States, it is way more lucrative to play Major League Baseball, to play in the NBA, to play in the NFL than it is to play in the MLS, unless you are a Messi or one of the players that they have gotten internationally where they just write a blank check to try to bring some excitement. So it's not necessarily the involvement with the fans, but it's the best athletes that the United States produces becoming soccer players. And if that's the case, or at least some of the best, then yes, they could. But I don't know if that's necessarily a 5 or 10 year window. That means, kids right now playing for Surf and all the other local teams here in San Diego need to be some of the best athletes in San Diego playing soccer to help this team out in the next 5 to 10 years.
Number 5.
The trailer for Happy Gilmore 2 was finally released today, with the sequel being set for release on Netflix on July 25th. Many of the same characters from the original will be in this follow-up, including Adam Sandler, Ben Stiller, and Christopher McDonald reprising his role as Shooter McGavin.
Showdown.
The trailer also included cameos from John Daly and Aztec for Life, Paige Spiranak. On a scale from 1 to 10, what's your level of interest in seeing Happy Gilmore 2?
Probably 7, maybe 7 or 8. I can't tell you the last time I watched like a brand new movie, so I'm interested. And when's it coming out? Summertime, yeah, summertime for sure. Yeah, probably 7 or 8. I mean, I don't want to say like 10. I'm going to be like waiting in line, dressed in golf clothes, like Star Wars people are with Star Wars or anything like that. But yeah, I'd probably go see it. I'll probably go see it in theaters if it comes out in theaters. If not, it's on Netflix only. Then I'll watch it when it comes out. Favorite character from the first? What about Aztec for Life? Chubbs. Carl Weathers. Rest in peace. Carl Weathers. Great Aztec. Great Aztec football player. Yes, you should. So we can.
Hard to beat Ben Stiller.
Yeah, Ben Stiller, and that's pretty funny too.
Oh, your fingers hurt. Now your back's gonna hurt.
That's a good movie.
You will go to sleep, or I will put you to
Shooter's
sleep.
great in that movie though too. I mean, he plays such a great like villain in the movie. See at the ninth screen at 9, 9th tee at 9, whatever it was. It's a good movie. It's good to have Adam Sandler movies back, and yeah, I'll be interested in watching that. Balsamic Vinny, Braden and I are going to crush some Diet Millers and watch it together. You're on, Balsamic. When we come back, why a healthy Manny Machado is really good news for the San Diego Padres, more than you think. Braden Surprenant Show, San Diego Summer Sports Station, 97.3 The Fan. Lunchtime hour on 97.3 The Fan. Braden Surprenant with all of you. Taking up to 2 o'clock, and Gwen and Chris got another great day on the docket. Coming up this hour, Sam Levitt will join us from Peoria to give us an update on what's going on in Padres land. Position battles continue to develop, and we got a lot of reports coming out of spring training with guys that might be shoo-ins for the team and guys that might or should be making the team and everything like that, and guys still battling for spots. Now, today, the Padres don't play till like 6 o'clock. They play the Giants tonight at 6. Now, it's interesting with the Giants, and it didn't make the sports thread, but we talked about it a little bit. Bradford Doolittle on ESPN.com put together 10 breakout teams. MLB's top 10 breakout teams for 2025. Again, the Padres play the Giants tonight. I'm pretty sure that game's at 6:10 out in Arizona. They start mixing in some of the night games. 6:05 is the game, which will be here on 97 through the Fan. We will have the game for you coming up after Gwen and Chris. So we'll have that game on. I'm trying to pull up the deal on MLB.com, and it's just slowly loading and going through a story that I don't want to skim through. But anyway, tonight it will be, and this is why we talked about Stephen Kolek earlier. Stephen Kolek for the Padres against, I'm pretty sure it's Robbie Ray, if I'm not mistaken. But I can't tell. Again, the page doesn't want to load. So yeah, Robbie Ray and Stephen Kolek tonight, 6:05. We'll have you covered on that here on 97.3 The Fan. But as mentioned, with the spring training going on and guys battling for spots, and that continuing tonight, Stephen Kolek has another opportunity to go out there and put together another good outing to give Kyle Hart a run for his money on the starting rotation. As much as they say it's Randy Vasquez, Kolek, and Kyle Hart, I don't really think Randy Vasquez is part of this conversation too much. Just because out of him being the youngest guy and needing reps at the lower levels and not having as great of a spring as Kolek and even Hart, they can let him start in AAA. I literally think it's Kolek or Hart. And right now I give Hart the nod. I still think they got to go with Hart. I love where Stephen Kolek is going in terms of direction. I think direction in the future is great for a guy like Stephen Kolek, who you picked up in a Rule 5 as a Rule 5 draft pick. I mean, you can say what you want about the Padres off seasons, but the thing that's great about AJ Preller, and look, he's known to sign the big guys when he has the clearance to sign the big free agents and everything like that. But the other thing with AJ Preller, that guy finds gems everywhere. I mean, he has found a handful of gems all over the place in Major League Baseball. Whether it be Rule 5, whether it be trading for minor leaguers, whether it be international signings, whether it be the draft. They have been found by AJ Preller. And the best work that AJ does is when he has a budget and has constraints. We saw that last year with the team they assembled. I mean, the conversation we're getting in the chat on YouTube, and we're live on YouTube. If you haven't checked us out yet, at @B_SURP, you can find my YouTube page there. You can also find the fans page, which we're broadcasting live on, as well as Facebook, Twitch. But, you know, the doomers in the chat about this team, and they didn't add enough, and the Dodgers are so much better. And first of all, who cares about what the Dodgers are doing? Stop focusing on them. Focus on us. And here in San Diego. But that was the same conversation we had last year, including at this time. Because at this point in the season last year, well, not really. I guess theoretically Dylan Cease was part of the team at this point last year because they were playing in these two opening games in Korea at the time. But in terms of where they're at before opening day and their opening day, Dylan Cease wasn't part of the equation. Luis Arraez was still a Miami Marlin. So there was still room to improve, but also at the same time, the narrative was like, we don't have enough. Asking a lot of Jackson Merrill, which I thought the team was asking a lot of Jackson Merrill. Added too many older players. I mean, Profar's here for the vibes. He's not necessarily here to help us. He's here for the vibes. They got guys like David Peralta and Donovan Solano. I mean, David Peralta wasn't very good before he showed up to San Diego. Like the year before, he was okay. But the way that they were able to assemble last year's team and win was a great job by A.J. Preller. Now, I wouldn't consistently try to do that year in and year out, but I think you got to give the guy some credit and believe that he's going to have a playoff caliber team ready to go with what they've been able to accomplish in the past. That doesn't mean the guy's been perfect, because he hasn't. I mean, he's missed on some things too. Who hasn't in Major League Baseball? What general manager hasn't missed and taken a big swing and missed at least once in their career? And some guys do it all the time. But there is a lot of good with what they have put together. And I like the team that they've assembled. And I've liked a lot that they have done, even though it's a lot of, marginal pieces, right? With a guy like Connor Joe or Jason Hayward. I like Jason Hayward's mental makeup. He's got to play good defense. I mean, obviously the bat is a major concern. But with the top of the lineup, you don't necessarily need Hayward to be a guy. He just needs to have put together good at-bats. Quality at-bats. Play good defense and put in quality at-bats. The team will be successful. And the biggest thing to me on why this team will be successful despite the offseason is health. And we've talked about it before on this show. Health. This team right now, from a position player standpoint, is healthy. And some of these guys are healthier than they've been in the last couple of years. That is a major addition to this team. I mean, you're adding health back to a lot of the spots in the lineup. Like a Fernando Tatis Jr., who feels one of the best he's ever felt. Like a Luis Ariz, who battled injuries last year and still managed to win a batting title. Like a Xander Bogaerts, who spent the offseason getting into shape so he could play a little bit more shortstop and be in those prime years. I mean, the guy went and worked. Not to say he didn't last year, but he worked even extra hard this year. And like guys like Manny Machado. Manny Machado is at 1,900 career hits and is eight home runs away from 350 in his career, which he will hit this year. Just 297 major leaguers have ever had 2,000 hits. Just 77 have had just 2,000 hits and 350 homers. Manny Machado turns 33 in July and has 8 years remaining on his contract. It is likely he has time to blow past 2,500 hits and 400 home runs, which only 29 baseball players have ever done. And it is not unfathomable he could reach 2,750 hits and 450 home runs, which only 16 players have ever done. And with some good fortune, he could fend off Father Time long enough to reach 3,500, which only 7 players have ever accomplished. That was all in the article today by Kevin Acee. Talking about Manny Machado, talking with Manny Machado, and his sights set on trying to be a Hall of Famer, and his sights set on being the best he possibly could be. And the thing is about this, he's finally healthy this year for the first time in a couple of years. If you think about, and this is what Joe Musgrove said in the article, I think it's a great point. Thinking about how bad Machado was for a stretch of time last year, quote from Joe, and he still ended up with 30 homers and 100 plus RBIs, you almost don't even, like at the end of the year, you look at the numbers and you're like, how the blank did that happen? He always finds a way to produce. It has been better part of 3 seasons in that his right elbow pain began in 2022, and he played through severe ankle injury that summer. He did not take batting practice much of 2023, and he ended that season and began 2024 as the Padres' designated hitter. Following surgery in October of 2023 to repair his extensor tendon, Machado did not swing a bat until a month before spring training last year and was still experiencing each day well into the season He said the elbow was never 100% until some point this past winter. Manny hasn't played or hasn't felt 100% since 2022. And then this past winter. So a healthy Machado in 2025, we should expect, well, not a whole lot different from the injured Manny Machado in terms of numbers, but maybe just a little bit more because remarkably, as Kevin Acee puts in his article, he's been pretty much the same as ever despite the injuries. I mean, think about the numbers he has put up in 2022, 2023, and 2024 while not fully healthy. And now he's fully healthy. And he's feeling the best. And again, this is why you look at spring training numbers with a grain of salt, because he doesn't hit very well. He's not hitting very well in spring training. And at the same time, it takes him a little bit to get going. But if you just look at his last couple of years, a 3.1 WAR in 24 with a 275 average and a 797 OPS, hit 29 homers. In 2023, also injured with the elbow, a 2.7 WAR, not one of his best, but still hit 30 home runs. And in 2022, all-star for the Padres, where he had an ankle injury, where he didn't miss significant amount of time, but a grade 3 ankle injury, and the elbow injury. He had a 6.8 WAR, which is third best for any Machado season in his career, with 32 home runs and 102 RBIs. And almost hit 300. He hit 298. That is all while he was hurt. And now he's healthy. And with him being healthy, and at age 32, as the prime years of athletes is starting to get a little bit bigger, there's a big reason why this team's going to be able to produce. And it's not just Manny, but it's the health of him and a couple other players. And I'll dive into why it's better than an offseason when we come back. Braden Surprenant Show on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. 12:19 on a Tuesday, getting you up ready for Padres baseball later on tonight. 6:05 start for the Padres against the San Francisco Giants. You can hear that right here on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Padres and Giants. Coming up later on our airwaves, we'll also have Aztec basketball on True TV tonight at 6:10. So a lot of San Diego sports. And if you're interested in college basketball, well, you got college basketball every single night that represents a San Diego team. Tomorrow night, for their first four, UC San Diego's women's team will be in action. And then coming up on Thursday, the Tritons are playing for their first ever game in the NCAA tournament. And the cool thing about UCSD, obviously, we had their athletic director on last week. I mean, what they have been able to accomplish is truly remarkable. But UCSD, their men's and their women's basketball team, making the NCAA tournament in the first year of eligibility, become the first school ever to have both their men's and women's basketball team make the NCAA tournament in their first year of eligibility. Remember, they had to sit out 4 years before becoming eligible for the postseason. That's insane. That's so hard to do. And they're both going to the dance. So a lot of big opportunities for women's basketball and men's basketball this week. Coming up later this week, San Diego State is going to be in Baton Rouge, their women's team, to take on LSU for the first round of the tournament in women's basketball. 20-something point underdogs. Chris Ello mentioned it when he was on with us yesterday about how it's a little disrespectful for the Aztecs. So maybe they take a little chip on their shoulder and go after it. Tonight, Aztecs and UNC. I know everybody in the country wants the Aztecs to win. That's kind of some unreal pressure for San Diego State. I know a lot of people are valuing North Carolina, being upset about what people are saying about them. You could only value that so much. I mean, sometimes you can overplay it. You don't want to play too much with your emotion. You got to be able to harness that. In certain sports, it doesn't really work out. So, I mean, you could say what you want about, North Carolina using it as bulletin board material, but as long as you take care of yourself, you should be able to go out there and handle business. Very athletic team. And we'll get you a full breakdown of that game coming up at 1 o'clock. A lot of people are upset about the offseason that the Padres had, or should I say lack thereof, in terms of bringing in players. I mean, you brought in some aging veterans, right? A guy like Jason Hayward, who's not playing very well in spring training. He apparently is going to be the left fielder for the Padres. And you gave him a little bit of cash in order to do so. That leaves less opportunities for some young players that you have part of the organization. The thing that works out with that, though, is with the guys that, like a Tirsa Ornelas, right? Or Connor Joe or Brandon Lockridge, all of those players have options. And so you could take a chance on a Jason Hayward, and you can take a chance on a Yuli Gurriel and hope that they can produce some results on the field that match that veteran presence and that veteran leadership, kind of mentality of having a vet on the bench and coming off the bench. You do need some of that experience to be a good team in Major League Baseball, but you can run with it for a couple of months. And if it doesn't work out, you can drop them and then pick up Joe or Ornelas or Lockridge, guys that have options. So it sets you up where you can have some of those deals. Now, I think the biggest upgrades that the Padres have made, again, if I mentioned before, is the Padres' health at the top of the order. Luis Arraez battled an injury all year last year. He's healthy. And he was still able to hit for a high average last year. And that's like adding a new player, getting a fully healthy Luis Arraez. Fernando Tatis Jr. is definitely like adding a new player. I talked about it before last week, and I know some people were like still talking about, Fernando. And I had some guy in the comments last week on social media is like, he's just never been the same after he took PEDs. The numbers don't lie. I mean, the guy's been hurt for the last couple of seasons. He's finally healthy. I mean, the balls are jumping off his bat when he hits right now. And the thing is I don't want to expect career years out of all those guys. I mean, that's playing a fool's game. But Fernando and his health is set up at his age to have a monster season. We talked about that last week. Manny Machado being healthy for the first time since 2022 and being still relatively in the prime of his career. And while he was still putting up big numbers while he was hurt, I think you're gonna get your money's worth in that contract this year, especially. And so I could see Manny Machado having close to a career type season. He's healthy. Tatis is healthy. Arise is healthy. And Xander Bogaerts is healthy. I'm going to be number one fan of Xander. And if I have to lead the charge, I will. And I hope it's to a point where you guys can jump on the bandwagon because the guy's kicking ass this year. But the reality is with Xander Bogaerts is he's going to have to play up to what he has been. But even in that first year as a Padre with a 4.4 WAR, that's going to be good enough to help this team out, especially if he's healthy and no more issues with the wrist. And then he missed time last year, significant amount of time last year with an injury that he suffered in Atlanta. He's back to playing his natural position. He lost 10 pounds during the offseason. So you're getting a rejuvenated Arise and Machado and Tatis and Xander. That's like off-season upgrades that don't cost you anything more than you were already paying. So you look at the overall roster, and it's always, did they improve the roster? Well, they lost XYZ, so they didn't go out and improve the roster. But they did get it. I think they're going to get improvements from the players that they already have that are back healthy now. I like the way they're playing. I like the mentality. I like the mental makeup. I like the narrative that's going on in Peoria right now. But I think they're good enough to overcome a lot of those spots that people are worried about. You got in the chat, yeah, if those guys don't pan out, they waste those outs for 2 months. The NFL playoff race is going to be tighter than you know what. And the thing is, yeah, it is. But that's, those are the risks you have to take when you're the team that's already spent the money. What happens if you keep the young guys and you cut the older guys and the young guys don't pan out? Now what do? You don't have a backup plan. At least with giving the older guys and the veterans the benefit of the doubt and an opportunity to play, who have experience doing so and don't have to be the guy. If it doesn't work out, at least you have a backup plan. If it doesn't work out with the young guys, you send it back down to AAA, and then who do you bring up? Who do you bring up? You don't have answers for that. So that's why you got to understand the game within the game of these rosters and how they're constructed with options in the numbers game. 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. A little bit more on the position battles. We got more information coming out of Peoria. Sam Levitt will keep us filled in as he heads over to the Peoria Sports Complex. I know the clubhouse will be open very shortly, so he's going to have a lot of great nuggets for us. He will join us when we come back on the Braden Surprenant Show on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 Fan. 12:34 on a Tuesday afternoon in America's finest city. We are 9 days away from opening day, and in just a little bit of time, we're going to be announcing today's biggest fan. Remember to listen at 1 o'clock for us to announce today's biggest fan for a chance to qualify for a night in our Odyssey suite at a future Padres game. Register your name at 97through-the-fan.sd.com/biggest fan in order to potentially have your name called. Joining us right now to talk about a lot of the high hopes for the Padres season, as well as position battles and everything going on in the final 9 days of spring training, even though they will probably be done before that anyway. Only 7 games left, including a game tonight at 6:05 against the Giants, which will be heard right here on 97 Through the Fan, is Sam Levitt joining us from Peoria. Sam, what's going on? How's the weather in Arizona? How's everything going?
Beautiful day in Arizona. Nice sunshine, a little windy out there as it tends to be from time to time here in AZ. But other than that, everything good here in Peoria.
9 days until opening day, Sam, but that really means less than 9 days before you get to return home to San Diego. Are you ready to come home?
Yes, I'm ready to head on back. I enjoy Peoria. I enjoy my time in Arizona. I enjoy my time perusing the greater Phoenix area, but I much prefer San Diego. So yes, I'm excited to get back. I'm excited to get back to my still relatively new digs of Ocean Beach and get the season started. More than anything, I'm ready for some real baseball. Yesterday's spring training game, I think, was the longest spring training game since the invention of the pitch clock. I don't know that for sure, but it sure felt like it. So I think all of us are about ready to get to real baseball.
Absolutely. I mean, there was some real baseball last night, but who's paying attention to those guys? We're focused in on the Atlanta Braves coming up on March 27th. A lot of position battles coming up right now in for the San Diego Padres. Kevin Acee, of course, had that article yesterday about some players that might be shoo-ins for the roster, including some veterans that might be a surprise to some people, and it might lead to maybe 4 or 5 guys battling for one more position spot. This is a couple of years now that you've been out there in spring training. I feel like this has been the most we have had when it comes to competition for spots on the roster.
Yeah, Braden, I think that's accurate. I think it's the most interesting battle for spots for a few different reasons, and we can start with the veterans. I mean, I know that Kevin's article seemed to surprise some people back in San Diego when it came out yesterday morning. I can't say I was very surprised reading it. I don't think the Padres signed Jason Hayward with the intention of then telling him that he had to have a stellar spring training or show him something in spring training in order to make the team. That's never been my read on it. And I think if you really think about how AJ Preller and this front office typically operate, it's not all that surprising that they would prefer, at least at the start of the year, to go with some of the veteran options. That's typically what they've done. If you look at the track record of how they've gone about things, typically when they have those kinds of guys like Hayward, guys like even Yuli Gurriel in camp. So I'm with Kevin in that sense. I think Hayward is going to be on this team. I think, opening day, I don't know, Chris Sale on the mound, but in general, he's going to be given an opportunity to play a lot of left field and start out there a lot and see what they have in him. And then obviously the other two elements, I think, to the position battles are, number one, there are a lot of guys playing well, which is a good problem to have. You want guys to show up in camp and play well, whether that's been a Gavin Sheets or an Oscar Gonzalez or Tirso Ornelas or an Eggy Rosario who's had his moments. There are a lot of guys playing really, really well, which is making it, especially Gavin Sheets, right? How can you ignore what he's done? Which makes it really difficult. I mean, they're putting the Padres in a tough spot. And I think the other element to it that's important to note is just who's out of options and who has them. And somebody like Eggy Rosario is out of options. And I think Eggy is an attractive player. He can hit left-handed pitching. He's versatile defensively. Tyler Wade, out of options. Again, if you would have asked me at the start of the year about Tyler Wade, I started spring training about Tyler Wade, I would have said, he's a lock. And I mean, I still feel like he's going to be on the team. But with that said, you start looking at what some other guys are doing and some of the skill sets around the clubhouse and guys battling. And I do think it makes you kind of wonder a little bit, like maybe, those situations aren't as much locks as we initially thought. And credit to the guys that are pushing for roster spots, because again, I think they're making it a really difficult decision for AJ Preller, Mike Schultz and company. I think that's for sure. So a lot of different, I know that was a very long answer, and that's what I tend to do, but a lot of different elements to consider right now for the Padres when it comes to all these different spots.
Sam Levitt joining us from Peoria, Arizona at Padres spring training. They'll play tonight at 6:05 against the San Francisco Giants, which you can hear right here on 97.3 The Fan. Sam, obviously, it's a long-winded answer because there's a lot to explain when it comes to all of these position battles. The thing is the numbers game, and that's obviously a factor for a lot of different organizations to try to keep as many players in the organization as possible. A lot of those players that might be doing a lot better than some of the veterans have options to get sent down to AAA or start the season in the minor leagues. How much do you think the Padres are going to use that as a way to try to keep as many of these players part of the organization as possible? Or do you think the Padres, with where they're at as an organization in terms of competitiveness for this season, are they just going to just pick the best 26 guys that they had in camp and not worry about potential options or non-options? How much do you think that's going to play a factor into the opening day roster that we'll get on March 27th?
Yeah, I think it'll play some, Braden. I don't know that it's the deciding factor, but I think it's a consideration, and I think it has to be. I think in the case of somebody like Eggy Rosario, what do we know about Eggy for sure? Eggy can hit left-handed pitching. He provides you defensive versatility. If I'm the Padres, I would sort of hate to lose Eggy Rosario at the start of the year. I would be intrigued by the idea of getting him on the roster, seeing what he can be, and if there are guys that do have options, and there are that are in this mix. Again, you made the good point, keeping the guys in the organization rather than having to move on from them. And then, it was a conversation I had with Ben and Woods this morning. I think another interesting part of it is, if you feel like there's no spot for an Eggy Rosario, is that somebody you look to make a move with, to trade, to get something for him if you don't think he's going to be on your opening day roster. So, Braden, I think it's part of it. I don't think it's all of it, but I think guys who are out of options, whether that's Rosario or that's a Tyler Wade, or even when you think about, other players, we can relate it to the catching situation as well. It's not like Luis Camposano is out of options. He has the ability to go down to the minor leagues and start there. Could that be a case for Martin Maldonado making this team in a backup role, at least to start the year, more in line with that thinking of, hey, let's see what we've got in these veterans in the early part of the year, and we can always, deal with them accordingly if we have to. We'll see. I think it's a really, really interesting part of this, the option part of this. And, with Rosario and Wade, I think in particular that could be a tough decision. And especially in the case of Wade, I don't know. And I'm not saying that Tyler's not making the team. And I want to preface this by saying that, I love Tyler Wade. I think he's a really important piece of this team and this clubhouse. But other guys have played so well that I think it starts to make you think a little bit, is there going to end up being a case or people in that room that advocate pretty loudly for some of these guys that have come in and played really, really well, and then you start looking at the skill set of Tyler and some of the other guys, and there's certainly some duplicity there, and especially with Jose Iglesias now here as well. So it's, Braden, it's all interesting things to think about. I think it weighs, significantly, but I don't think it's everything.
Sam Levitt joining us from Peoria, Arizona, where he is at covering spring training for this entire month. Excited to get back to OB and his home, obviously, in the next couple of days or so. Joining us on the Braden Surprenant show. But, you start doing the math of this and you start breaking it down and filling in the pieces, as you follow along in Kevin Acey's article, and then you start looking at some of the spots and who's left. And, the interesting one to me that I don't think is getting enough talked about, and I think a lot of people just assume he's going to be on the team, but the thing that's really, concerning for, the local product in Connor Joe is the fact that he does have options, right? So even though he has played well this spring training and they gave him a contract to be a platoon in the outfield potentially or play some in the infield, when you start looking at potentially keeping a Yuli Gurriel or keeping both Tyler Wade and Eggy Rosario because they're out of options, the big question mark is Connor Joe. Not that he doesn't deserve to be on the team, because I think he's definitely played his way to that point, but the options for him lay it out where it's not going to be crazy if he's not on the opening day roster on March 27th.
I don't think it's a crazy thought. Now, is that going to be any fault of his own? Probably not. He's come in and he's done a nice job, and he's done what's been asked of him here at spring training. But to your point, Braden, the option part of it, I think, is a consideration. Now, if you would have asked me that at the start of spring, I would probably look at Connor Joe as a player who's on a major league contract. He brought in highly with the assumption that he was going to be on your opening day roster. But again, if you are intrigued enough by some of these other options, and I don't mean options as far as players being out of options, but options as far as the variety of players you have here right now that are playing well. And Connor is somebody that you can send down at least for a little bit and at least see what you got in some other guys, so you don't have that flexibility with. I do think it's part of it. I'm not saying that Connor Joe would have done anything wrong in that sense, but this is how this plays out sometimes. It's not only about how guys play and, what kind of contract they're on. Sometimes it can be as simple as trying to keep assets in your organization that otherwise you're going to lose, that you might still be intrigued by. So, or hypothetically lose, depending on the waiver process and all that comes with being out of options and DFA'd. So, Braden, I think it's all part of it. I don't have the exact answers, but it would not shock me if that happened with Connor Joe. And again, it's nothing he did per se, but that can certainly be a factor in all this. So it would not shock me. No.
Sam Levitt joining us on the Braden Surprenant shows to take you up to 2:00 today, and Gwen and Chris, who will be out there in Peoria as well. Should have a good full show planned on the Gwen and Chris show, interviewing a lot of players. Transitioning to the pitching side of things, obviously there's a battle for the number 5 starting spot. There's, concerned a little bit, but not too much with Yu Darvish in the starting rotation. And then, of course, the opening day starter was named yesterday. Let's start with the opening day starter. Michael King announced his opening day starter. That was a little bit of a surprise to me. It sounded like it might have been a little bit of a surprise to you as well, thinking we might have thought Dylan Cease would have been the opening day starter. For me, I think it's just a great honor to Michael King. Some people think it leads to potentially trading Dylan Cease. I think that's I don't think you could read between the lines too much. But what was your initial reaction to Michael King being the opening day starter? And what was some of the things that, Mike Schilt was telling you guys about that decision?
Yeah, I think, number one, I think it's a great honor for Michael. Quite frankly, if you were just sitting me in a room and asking me out of Darvish, Cease, and King, who from a baseball sense would I start, I'd probably pick Michael King. I really would. I mean, I think he was that good last year. I think he was that good in the postseason. I think he's going to be that good this year for the San Diego Padres, and is in all likelihood, whether it's from the Padres or some other team, going to earn himself a lot of money this offseason. I think the world of Michael King and what he can be this season. So he probably would have been my pick, all things being equal. Now, I thought it was pretty clear, as Mike Schilt talked about it, that Yu Darvish was going to be the opening day starter, but then he's dealing with this general fatigue, and that was after he got pushed back because of the rain, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and kind of knocked him off schedule for a potential opening day start and the way things were lining up. And look, just a quick aside on the general fatigue with Darvish, it doesn't sound like anything the Padres are all that worried about. At the same time, they weren't ready to commit yesterday. That isn't something that could impact his first turn through the rotation, whenever that would be in your first turn. So it's something to monitor. I think it's something that you have dealt with before, this general fatigue, and we don't know a ton beyond that, but it is something just to monitor, and hopefully it's kind of what the Padres I think expect right now, and really not that big of a deal. But when Darvish was kind of out of that equation, look, it sounds like it was just sort of a scheduling thing where it fell out, a little bit better to keep Michael on sort of his normal schedule and keep Dylan on sort of his normal schedule and give King the start. But my goodness, he's so deserving by what he did last year, and he's certainly happy about it and proud to have that moment. So I think it's great. I mean, to me, from a baseball sense, he kind of feels like the guy who probably should start. That's not a knock on Dylan Cease at all, but I thought King was just about as good as you could have hoped last year, and especially in those big postseason games as well. So good for him, and I think it'll be cool to see him out there.
Pitching tonight is Stephen Kolek, getting another opportunity to try to win that number 5 spot. Kyle Hart, even though the results didn't look very great, he did actually pitch pretty well. I mean, that Corbin Carroll home run was a projected batting average of 150. Blew out of the ballpark at a windy ballpark, and it's kind of a crapshoot in spring training, but he's looked really good. And then, of course, Randy Vasquez is part of that conversation with Matt Waldron, being hurt to start the season. Mike Schultz said he wanted to see some guys in AAA to pitch. He did say a bullpen piece for a long relief man as well, and then a number 5 starter. How do you see this one playing out with those 3 players in those 3 particular spots?
Yeah, I still think it's very open, Braden. Kyle Hart, to your point, I thought he actually pitched better than what you would see if you just looked at the final line. I mean, he did battle out of trouble in a couple of innings. You mentioned the Carroll home run. It was not hard hit at all. I thought if he gets a call or 2 more his way, he may be able to go even deeper in that game or have even more success as far as limiting base runners. So, and also he was coming off being really under the weather, but feels like he's in a spot where if he does get that 5th starter opportunity, he'll be all the way built up to where he needs to be. So Kyle Hart's very intriguing. Stephen Kolek, my goodness, has had a really great spring, whether it's in the Cactus League games or on the backfield, and there has been a lot of Stephen Kolek buzz around here. So, to me, tonight is a big opportunity for Steven. I haven't seen the Giants lineup. I would assume it's going to have a lot of major league guys in it, with it being a night game at home in Scottsdale. It's a big start for Stephen Kolek tonight. If we're going by spring training results, it feels like he's got a real opportunity. I don't want to say to lock this thing up, but make a big time push for it tonight if he can go out there and have a good outing. And then look, I know Randy Vasquez had a rough start to the spring as far as the Cactus League games, but I really believe he's still in the mix here. I mean, he does have, something that Kolek and Hart don't have, which is he's more of a known commodity to the Padres. I mean, look, we kind of know what he is right now. He's going to give up hits and he's going to allow base runners, but, for a number 5 starter, it might be good enough for a while. If Randy can be what he was essentially last year and be a guy who, just kind of maneuvers his way through 5, 6, and he's going to give up some runs, but maybe you can bear it in a 5th starter spot. And I'll tell you, he made a start in a AAA game a handful of days ago that the Padres were super happy with. And I've heard multiple people say very good things about. So I'm not ruling out Randy at all. I'm not. And then beyond the 5th starter conversation, Braden, I think another just fascinating part of this is whoever doesn't get that 5th spot, will the Padres just send him down to AAA to be stretched out and be an option for later in the year? Or are they going to take one of those guys and use him as a long man in the bullpen? Because right now, I think you look at it, the 6 locks for the bullpen that I see are not guys who are going to give you multiple innings, at least at the beginning of the year, certainly in all likelihood. And Johnny Brito's dealing with, forearm issues. And, Ron Marinaccio threw a couple of innings the other day, so maybe he can give you some length. Juan Nunez, the Rule 5 pick, threw a couple of innings the other day. Maybe he can give you some length. My point is, if you have a situation for series of the year where you need a guy to give you 3 innings or something like that because your starter, gets roughed up, I just don't see who that is right now out of the guys we know that are in that bullpen. So I'm intrigued to see if they feel the necessity one way or another to get somebody who can eat some innings in certain scenarios in that bullpen at the start of the year, because right now that guy, as far as guys we know are going to be in there, is not there. So hey, Logan Gillespie threw 3 innings the other day in Tempe. I mean, would it be a crazy idea start of the year? Hey, we got to have somebody that can eat up some innings. So I'm intrigued by that to see how they handle that, especially with no Waldron and now Brito dealing with injury issues again. And, you're down to only a few options for that 5th starter spot. So I think it's a pretty interesting conversation.
The most important question that is facing everybody in Peoria, though, of course, Sam, is how was dinner last night with Matt Scravy? Where'd you guys go? And, hopefully you didn't run the bill up too much for Matt.
No, we did not run the bill up too much. We went to Chompy's, which is the same place I've been to with Ben and Woods. Very good deli spot right by the complex here, a couple minutes away in Peoria. Matt had some sort of turkey club type sandwich. I had a lox onion omelet with I also had bacon and I had fruit. And yes, and Matt Scravy was insistent on paying. And I said, well, Matt, we're both going to expense it. And he said, oh, I'll just expense it. I said, all right, well, you're going to have to You have to put a note that says we both did it. He's like, no, I got it. I was like, okay. I said, okay, this is gonna be your problem. So
the locks, the locks, love it.
Yeah. So hopefully he has no problems expensing it. But yes, very good to get dinner with Mr. Scraby last night. We enjoyed it.
Well, if he does have problems, he'll just talk about it on his gripes. So I'm sure we'll hear about
yes,
it. Of
exactly.
Course. Yeah. No, he didn't invite Ello and Lori. No. Well, come on. It's all right. Let guys beat dudes. Sam, I appreciate the time. Thanks again. Always a wealth of knowledge, and there's a lot of big questions burning for the Padres.
Yeah.
Keep up the hard work, and we'll see you in a matter of a couple of days out here back in San Diego.
All right, you got it, Braden. Appreciate it.
Sam Levitt join us from Peoria. Padres will get in action tonight at 6:05, but at 6:10, it's San Diego State, North Carolina. Full preview of that matchup when we come back on the Braden Surprenant Show on San Diego's number sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Final hour of the Braden Surprenant Show on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Put out our Do You Know Ball question of the day. Today's Do You Know Ball question of the day on the Braden Surprenant Show. Can you watch your favorite team at a watch party or a public setting, especially if it's a big game? 57% said yes, of course. 42% say don't bug me. Alone. I'll tell you my official thoughts on that at the end of the show to see if you know ball or not. Most of my friends have picked don't bug me, alone. But I think a lot of that has to go with the fact that we're kind of over right now when we're watching our favorite teams together as a group. We went to the national championship. Now my group of buddies that have a group chat that like to talk about a lot of things. They wanted me to talk about their trip to Vegas. I said, I can't talk about your trip to Vegas because I wasn't there. I'm not going to just read your group text because half of the time I was confused on what was going on anyway.
Also, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
That is correct. I was even there, so I shouldn't even know anyway. And so they're like, oh, come on, it's going to be funny. I'm like, I wasn't there. If I was there, I could talk about certain things that leaked out of Vegas. But my buddy Sam, who's sometimes in the chat, Aztec alum, my buddy Mike went to Irvine and played baseball at Irvine in West Kentucky, likes Penn State, grew up a Penn State fan. My buddy Matt is from San Diego, went to Washington State for school, big Washington State Cougs guy, likes the Dallas Cowboys. So it's kind of like the group of teams. I'm obviously a born and raised San Diegan. We all love the Padres, so that we have that in common. So that doesn't get affected too much. I went to TCU, but I grew up rooting for Arizona and San Diego State because my parents went there. And then, of course, I root for my siblings' schools as well. My sister went to High Point, so they made the NCAA tournament for the first time. I'm not like a diehard High Point fan. Like if they're playing, and they're on, I'll watch them. But I'm not the biggest fan of High Point. That being said, we do have to announce today's biggest fan. And I'll continue my story after we announce today's biggest fan, which is Debbie Terry from San Diego. Congratulations to today's biggest fan, Debbie Terry from San Diego. Give us a call back within the next 10 minutes at 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973, and you'll qualify for our grand prize, 20 tickets for you and your friends for a night in our Odyssey Suites at a Padres game later this season. Remember to register your name at 973thefansd.com/biggest-fan. Debbie Terry from San Diego. You got 10 minutes to call 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973 to qualify for our grand prize, 20 tickets for you and your friends for a night in our Odyssey Suite at a Padres game later this season. Debbie Terry. Anyway, so back to the story. So, I'm rooting for Tennessee, High Point, San Diego State, Arizona, TCU. I have reasons for rooting for those teams at the college level. I also, obviously, being from San Diego, big Padres fan, like the local teams. I support the Anaheim Ducks and San Diego Gulls, local colleges, so be it. But all of us have our own diehard teams that we like. And so far, when we have watched games that are important games, and luckily enough for us, we have had a lot of important games for our beloved teams. When we watch them together at either one of our houses as like a watch party or we go to a bar, disasters happen. It really started with the national championship when I brought them to the national championship up in SoFi Stadium where TCU lost to Georgia. That was where it really started. That was a bad start to this particular ordeal. And then my buddy Matt, who refuses to watch any important Cowboy game with anybody, including his family, had, people over for the Cowboys-Packers game a couple years ago for the playoffs, where the Packers went into Dallas and just beat the living you-know-what out of the Dallas Cowboys. 0 for 2. Obviously, not looking great. On top of that, the insult to injury with that particular sense is Jordan Love, who went out there and shredded the Cowboys for that game, ended up starting to work out at the gym that Matt works at up in Scripps Ranch, Fitness Quest 10, after they got eliminated. So, like, day one of him going back to work, Jordan Love shows up. Imagine watching your team get smoked by another team, and that team's quarterback, best player, ends up showing up to your place of work now. I mean, most of the time you got to deal with the S that you get from your coworkers and everything, let alone the guy that physically did it himself. I could imagine that feeling right there. I mean, I guess you got to work with Adam as a Georgia guy, but it's not like he was on the team. Don't have Adam. If you hire a Stetson Bennett, I might have to put in my resignation.
Come on.
That would be like Stetson Bennett just joining, just like, you know what, I want to get at Sports Talk Radio, and we're gonna have him on with you at this point in time, like the day after the national championship game. Just be like, okay. I mean, imagine that. I guess he was a patron, so it's not like he was a colleague. It would be, you know, a listener or something like that. But you get shredded by Jordan Love in a playoff game, and then the guy shows up to your work for the next 3 months to work out for the next season, to get ready for the next season against your potential teams. He ends up, you know, becoming kind of, you know, decent friends with Jordan Love. So like, it worked out there, but that's 0 for 2. And then, you know, went over to my buddy's house. He's a Penn State guy, you know, watched Notre Dame beat up on him in the semifinals. Which is not great. Again, another loss for the friend group in a group setting. And then this past weekend, Sam's turn, San Diego State basketball. They go out to Vegas for the whole weekend for Aztecs basketball and Irvine basketball. And what happens? Well, the Aztecs, for the first time in 18 years, don't make it to the semifinals of the Mountain West tournament. And then Irvine loses to UC San Diego, which is not the worst thing for us here in San Diego. I mean, I was obviously, whatever, upset for my buddy who's an Irvine fan, but I got to represent San Diego at the same time. So it was kind of mixed emotions, but I felt bad for Mike because, you know, UC Irvine's been the class of that deal the whole time. So needless to say, I don't know if we're going to be meeting up tonight to watch the Aztecs play North Carolina, because I think for all of you Aztec fans, it would be better for us if we didn't. I'm going to watch it at home. And I think a lot of my friends have that attitude of, I'd rather watch the game by myself at this point in time. As Nate Taylor put in the chat, Matt is a curse. He finished the season strong for the Padres at games. Hopefully he's going opening day. So if the Padres start 1-0, he's flipped the curse a little bit. But that's today's question of the day. Do you know ball? Can you watch your favorite team at a watch party or a public setting? Assuming you're not going to the game, and if it's a big game, yes, of course, or don't bug me, leave me alone. I'm going to watch it alone. That's our daily poll today at 97 through the Fan SD on social media. You could also check it out on the B Surp page as well at B_SURP. My own personal Twitter page. You can also follow me on Instagram and on TikTok as well by those handles at B_SURP. Be sure to give us a like on the YouTube chat if you haven't done that already on the YouTube. Everybody that's on YouTube, thanks again for all of you guys jumping on. We really appreciate that, but be sure to vote in that poll. I'll give you my 2 cents at the end, even though I kind of explained it a little bit, but that's why that question was posed, was because tonight we got to go somewhere to watch. Not a lot of people interested in doing that. Although the last time the Aztecs made a run, I went to pitchers every single time in Rancho Penasquitos, and they went all the way to the national championship. So maybe I have to do that for the betterment of San Diego State. I mean, I will. Don't pull my leg. But, you know, if I have to do that, I will. San Diego State, North Carolina. Full breakdown of this potential matchup coming up. But we do want to mention, you know, we had it earlier on in the morning. And I know it was posted last night, but Brian Dutcher was asked about Magoon-Guath and the health status of Magoon-Guath and whether or not he would be able to play tonight against North Carolina. Here's the latest update that we have from Brian Dutcher leading into tonight's game against North Carolina.
Magoon is our freshman big. He was freshman of the year in the Mountain West Conference, defensive player of the year in the Mountain West Conference, and he's been out of action since February 22nd, I believe. So basically 6 games. He got hurt 2 minutes into the Utah State game. So now we practiced full yesterday, limited reps, but full go. And so our intention is to have him on the court tomorrow and see what kind of difference he'll make for the Aztecs.
We'll see what type of difference he makes. That's a big question. That's a big question in this game tonight is, will Guath's presence help San Diego State control the boards on the rebounding side? And how does the return of 7-foot Magoon-Guath impact this game? San Diego State's defense is one of the best in the country. In fact, Aztecs lead the nation in defensive field goal percentage at 37.8%. North Carolina's got the offensive firepower. They rank 22nd in offensive efficiency. So the big main questions and really keys of the game, can San Diego State's defense neutralize R.J. Davis, who's averaging 17 points per game for the Tar Heels? And how does the return of 7-foot Magoon-Guath impact this game? We'll try to answer some of those questions and give you a bigger preview of tonight's game between San Diego State and North Carolina coming up at 6:10 on True TV. Game 1 for the Aztecs in the NCAA tournament. They got to win 7 to win a national championship. They start in the first 4. It starts tonight. North Carolina has played San Diego State only twice in the past, both in 1988 and 1990, before any of these players were even born. UNC leads it overall 2-0. The 21-9 Aztecs and the 22-13 UNC Tar Heels. We'll talk more about that. We'll get to your phone calls when we return on the Braden Surprenant Show on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. 117 on Tuesday in America's finest city. We got Aztec basketball and the NCAA tournament getting ready to start up today as part of the first four. First game of the NCAA tournament will actually be between two 16 seeds in the South region as Alabama State plays St. Francis at 3:40 this afternoon on True TV. Aztecs and North Carolina will tip off after the conclusion of that game. And just knowing San Diego State basketball, I'm sure it'll be delayed in some case. At least it's on the same network and playing in the same gym. So it's not like they start on some other app or something like that before you get to watch them play. Both these obviously in the South region, Alabama State, St. Francis, Pennsylvania. Winner will take on Auburn and probably lose. And then San Diego State and North Carolina, winner will take on Ole Miss on Friday at 1:05 p.m. Pacific time. That game will be on TNT on Friday. And hopefully we'll be on when we go to Dave & Buster's on Friday to talk and be out there with all of you guys. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to Friday's show. Got to get through the week, and hopefully we have a good showing out of the Aztecs today against North Carolina. We're going to get you a full breakdown of that game in just a little bit, but I do want to mention that Friday's shows will be at Dave & Buster's in Mission Valley as we broadcast live all day long in celebration of the biggest college hoops tournament of the year. Bennett Woods kick things off at 6 a.m., followed by myself at 10 a.m., Gwen and Chris at 2, and then we'll wrap up the day with Matt Scraby and the Scraby Show at 6 o'clock. There will be a breakfast burrito station, drink specials on mimosas, Bloody Marys, and beer throughout the day. Basketball shooting competition and hourly raffle giveaways. Join us at Dave & Buster's at 2931 Camino del Rio North next Friday for a full day of fun with your favorite talk show. Should be a great time. I don't know. The breakfast burrito station should get you there on its own. So we'll see what happens, but it should be a fun time on Friday. If you have time to stop by, please come down, say hi to your favorite fan personalities, and enjoy some college basketball. North Carolina, San Diego State tonight, 6:10 on True TV at the University of Dayton Arena in Dayton, Ohio. San Diego State 21-9. UNC is 22-13. UNC leads the overall series 2-0 with wins in 1988 and 1998, both before I was born and both before any of the players in this game were born. So take that for what it's worth. Biggest thing that I'm looking for tonight is San Diego State's defensive strength versus UNC's offensive firepower. We talked about it going into the last break. Aztecs lead the nation in defensive field goal percentage. They've done a great job, as they always do on the defensive side of things, holding opponents' field goal percentage to 37.8%. Limit the possessions, keep the score down, and the Aztecs have a really good chance. UNC, on the other hand, is pretty good offensively, though, as they are 22nd in offensive efficiency. Can San Diego State's defense neutralize R.J. Davis, who is averaging 17 points per game? And how does the return of 7-foot Magoon Guath impact this game? Now, the thing with Magoon Guath, he will play in this game in some capacity. I don't know if he's going to be at full strength. Probably not. But I just think him having a presence in there is going to help out a little bit. You'll see quickly whether or not he is even at a level where it's going to be an impact, because the thing that San Diego State needs to avoid is Magoon Guath going out there and trying to do too much and not actually being good enough to play in terms of his health. We've seen that with a lot of different athletes in important games. They want to suck up the pain and get out there and go compete for their team and give their team the best effort that they have, but sometimes that's not good enough to help the team out. In fact, it's even better for them just to not play in that particular case. I don't know if that's the situation here, and hopefully the warm-ups for Magoon go well, because him on the court is a lot better than him not on the court, especially standing in at 7 feet tall and his ability to shoot, from range. That's going to be a big component in this game. San Diego State has had some offensive struggles all season. We've talked about that. They rank 111th in offensive efficiency, scored just 52 points in Mountain West quarterfinal loss to Boise State. Didn't make a field goal for the last 9 minutes in that game. And will Miles Byrd and BJ Davis bounce back after shooting 3 for 17 combined? Offensive struggles. That's been the biggest problem for the Aztecs really ever. I mean, the times that they usually go on runs, they have at least one guy to take over the game. They're going to need Miles Byrd to take over a game, or or somebody else at this particular spot. I mean, they need some help, and be able to score. And that's a big problem for San Diego State. It's going to come down to the rebounding battle. San Diego State struggles on the glass. They allowed Boise State to dominate second chance points in the game of the Mountain West Conference tournament. An 18-3 advantage on second chance points for Boise State. North Carolina hits the offensive rebounds, and San Diego State's going to be in a jam. UNC's ability to rebound could be the key to their success, but can Magoon Gua's presence help San Diego State control the boards? You need Magoon to go out there and get some rebounds today, especially on the defensive end, because they allowed way too many against Boise State, and that put them in a major hole the entire time. I mean, that was the worst San Diego State's played, one of the worst they've played all year, coming off of a really good performance against Nevada at Viejas Arena. Don't go too fast. North Carolina likes to play at a high pace, high tempo team. You got to slow it down. You got to play good defense. You got to limit possessions, and you got to win the rebounding battle. UNC obviously is going to have that chip on their shoulder. A very unusual 1-12 record in quad one games. Something that is the lowest that has ever gotten a team in the NCAA tournament. West Virginia's so upset their governor's trying to sue the NCAA. That's going to make a difference, right? I don't like politicians getting involved with the sports side of things. I mean, you're not accomplishing anything, dude. Stop trying to rally the troops behind it. Stop trying to make it about you. But a 1-12 record in quad one games is significant. I mean, just because North Carolina has played the games doesn't mean they're as good as the games that they've played. They have to win some of those games. They've only won one. Now, that being said, they are 8-0 in quad two games, so it's not like they're a slouch of a team. They're still good enough to beat you, but there is going to be a lot of conversation of whether or not they deserve to be in the tournament. And a lot of the times when teams have that question of should they be in the tournament or not, they end up making a little bit of a run. So you can't let that fuel North Carolina's fire. You shouldn't have to worry about it. But I will say this, with the fact that they had a resume that wasn't necessarily good enough to make the tournament and they made it, and a lot of people being upset about that, you've definitely won over the national crowd of tonight's game, which means you've probably won over the neutrals that are going to be from Dayton, Ohio, attending the game, or maybe some of the fans from the teams of Alabama State at St. Francis, PA that stick around to watch the game, or maybe Texas and Xavier who wanted to go there for a couple of days and want to watch a couple of days of basketball. That neutral fan win is so huge in the NCAA tournament. Again, it's something that's not talked about a whole lot because it's so unique to the NCAA tournament. We talked about it earlier on the show. Steve Fisher brought it up in his interview with Ben and Woods, the significance about the momentum shift, but also winning over that neutral crowd. And right now they have the advantage because I think a lot of people in Dayton want to see the San Diego State Aztecs beat North Carolina because they think it's a joke that North Carolina made the NCAA tournament. Strong non-conference schedule for UNC, ranked 5th nationally, but again, they didn't win a lot of those games. A lot of mixed results against the top teams, but have played close games. It's not like they're getting blown out, with the exception of Duke, who had blown them out twice. They did complete a 24-point comeback against Duke in the ACC tournament, ended up losing that game, but Duke didn't have their best player in Cooper Flack. Look at Magoon Gua's defensive presence and Nick Boyd's scoring ability tonight compared to RJ Davis's scoring and UNC's ability to avoid getting blocked. San Diego State leads the nation in block percentage at 18.5%. Now, a lot of that's going to come from Magoon Gua and his defensive presence. If he could go out there and play a lot of minutes, I don't know how many minutes he's going to be able to play. I mean, he's missed like 6 games. He hasn't played in a couple of weeks. So not only does he have to try to come back and play a little hobbled, but he's going to have to try to play and be in enough shape to be able to go out there and compete at a high level. Now, I think adrenaline's probably going to take over at some point. But really, the health status of Magoon Gua is really going to shift how this team performs. I think Nick Boyd might be able to be that guy to take over a little bit with Miles Byrd. They have to have a good 1-2 punch tonight for San Diego State against North Carolina. Nick Boyd's been in a big stage before. I mean, he was part of that FAU team that went to the Final Four. So his first time being in the First Four, Brian Dutcher's first time being in the First Four. Someone's got to take over on offense for an offense that's really lacked from the majority of the season. Which team handles pressure better in do-or-die tournament setting? Aztecs got a lot of young players. North Carolina, they didn't make the tournament. They would, if they would have missed the tournament, they would have missed the tournament 2 of the last 3 years. So not really too much of an advantage, but there are still a couple of guys for San Diego State that have some deeper appearances in the NCAA tournament. And of course, led by a coaching staff that had just taken their team to the Final Four a couple of years ago. Ken Pom projects a close 74-71 win for North Carolina. Can San Diego State's experience in the NCAA tournament, 5th straight appearance, give them an edge? And how much will UNC's tough schedule prepare them for this moment? That's really the two big questions in this game. Experience in multiple NCAA tournament appearances, experience in one of the most difficult schedules in all of college basketball. That's going to have to be answered tonight. We'll talk more about this with some final thoughts on tonight's game to get you ready for Aztecs and Tar Heels, plus a look at the rest of the NCAA tournament as you start to put together your bracket, because that's due Thursday morning. We'll give you some answers to that and some answers to tonight's game when we come back in the Braden Surprenant Show on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Final segment of the Braden Surprenant Show on a Tuesday in March. It's time for March Madness. You get the first tease of the first four here in the next hour or so. In 2 hours, you'll have St. Francis of Pennsylvania, and you will have Alabama State, 340 True TV. After that, San Diego State, North Carolina at 610 True TV. Get your little test and a little tease of March Madness the next 2 days before the other first four games between American and Mount St. Mary's and Texas and Xavier. And then we get into it on Thursday. Thursday, always a great time of the year, the first couple of days of March Madness, some of the best days in the sports world with MLB coming around right around the corner. We made it through the dark times of February, everybody, and we're here for March Madness basketball and college basketball and opening day. Opening day for the Padres within 9 days now, as we will be out there at Baja Ricks on March 27th, winning our Ben and Woods and then myself getting you ready for Padres baseball for a 1:10 starts on opening day, leading up to Sam Levitt and the Padres pregame show, and Jesse and Tony taking over. Can't wait for Padres baseball, but we're entertained until then with some college basketball starting tonight with San Diego State and North Carolina. We talked a lot about what's at stake here for the Aztecs and what has to happen. I mean, obviously, controlling the rebounds is going to be a key part in the game tonight, trying to slow down R.J. Davis, another key cog in what you got to do. The other thing also is they like to run up and down the court. San Diego State needs to find a spot where they can't, don't play to the pace that North Carolina plays at. Slow things down, get rebounds, prevent second chance opportunities. Basically do exactly the opposite of what you did against Boise State, and you should be in a lot better shape. And hopefully the experience of your fifth straight NCAA tournament appearance will pay some dividends compared to the UNC tough schedule that probably prepared them for this moment as well. I mean, that is an advantage for North Carolina. I mean, just because they didn't win any of these games, they have played a lot of good teams this season, and they're used to some tough competition. The difference is San Diego State has actually beat a couple of teams that has tough competition. What does this game mean for each program's future? I don't think that's really a big question of where you're at. I mean, San Diego State's they're a good program that's still trending in the right direction. We asked the question at the beginning of the day of whether or not if they lose this game would make it an unsuccessful season. And a lot of that has to go with what you were expecting the Aztecs to do at the beginning of the season. If you thought the expectations for the beginning of the season was anything of first four, exit, or less, then I would consider this a successful season. If you thought at the beginning of the season this team could go further than that or win a Mountain West Conference tournament or win a Mountain West Conference championship outright, then sorry, guys. I mean, it's just not, it wouldn't be a successful season despite the team being young and everything else that's in play. That's where we're at with San Diego State basketball. They've played themselves as a program to such a high standard that, just making the NCAA tournament as a first four should not be something to be super excited about. It's successful. Is it successful? I don't necessarily know if it's a successful season. I think it's positive. I think it's, there's a lot of good things that could come out of the season with young guys stepping up, and hopefully you bring them back next year, whenever this season potentially ends. I think that's, some positives out of the season. I think the way that they beat Houston is positive. And beating Creighton and being a player in the Players Tournament, I think is a big pluses for San Diego State. But overall, with just the way the program and the heights of the program has been to, and you can't expect a Final Four every year. But at the beginning of the season, I think right now the every year goal for the Aztecs should be try to make it to a Sweet 16. I think that's the new level that they need to be at right now in terms of where they have taken the program. I think 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago, making the tournament and just making the tournament's great. But I think they've definitely played to a spot of making the tournament and winning a game to get to the round of 32. And, after the recent success that they've had, I think their goal should be every year make it to a Sweet 16. I think that's where we need to be at if we want to take this program to even higher marks. Now, a lot of that's going to have to do with NIL now in this day and age of college athletics and trying to keep some of these players like a Magoon, like a Miles Bird, players that are younger that will, go to the combine for the NBA and see where their professional stock is at. But at the same time, understanding if they don't make it that far, which you got to let them go out there and explore, that you got to have the money to be able to keep these guys part of this team. Otherwise, it's not successful in a sense of you can't build with young guys and then have them leave in the portal. You're not accomplishing anything. That would make it even more of a non-successful season. Could this be a statement game for either team heading into the next round? I don't know about a statement game, but I think it does give them a little bit of momentum. I mean, the travel obviously stinks, having to fly to Dayton. Quick turnaround after finding out you were playing in the NCAA tournament. Luckily for the Aztecs, they found out sooner than everybody else. I mean, that pick was quick in the first couple of picks when they were revealing the field. And so from that standpoint, they got to quickly get to work. And as Steve Fisher said on Ben and Woods this morning, their staff divvied up some tapes. They were able to get, 20-something films on North Carolina and start breaking it down. But again, quick turnaround. They had to participate in a mandatory shoot around and practice today or yesterday and had to get out there quick. So not a whole lot of time to really prepare on court. The thing is, though, in terms of preparation, just from a coaching standpoint, and I know football is a little bit different, but when you're at this point in the season and you have the coaching staff that Dutch has, you're not spending too much time on the court to put in a lot of the stuff you need to do. It's all mental. I mean, you get to this part in the year, it's mental reps in your opponent, and it's just trying to keep your body in shape, healthy, and in as good of a spot as you possibly need in order to make a run. And this is a gauntlet of a run that the Aztecs are going to have to go through, as they have to win 7 games now to win a national championship. But everybody's available, and everybody's got a chance coming into this NCAA tournament. So, final thoughts on this particular game. Can San Diego State's experience in the NCAA tournament give them an edge? How much for North Carolina's tough schedule prepare them for this? Can San Diego State get boards on the glass and eliminate second chance points? And can they slow down UNC's offensive firepower that includes RJ Davis's 17 points per game? And an offense for North Carolina that ranks 22nd in offensive efficiency. Aztecs lead the nation in defensive field goal percentage, 37.8%. Those are some of the things you got to look for in tonight's matchup between North Carolina and San Diego State. We haven't had too much time to take a look at the bracket. I mean, and there's a lot of different angles with this bracket. There's a lot of different gauntlets in this bracket and a lot of different things to kind of point out as you start to fill out your NCAA tournament brackets. Again, you don't need them to be filled out before the first 4 starts. You just got to get them filled out before the first game on Thursday. And that first game is going to be Louisville and Creighton. And we'll start with the South region to really kind of break down the overall synopsis of this as you look to fill out your bracket. Auburn is obviously the favorite, is the number 1. They got great guard play. They're a team that is going to be very difficult to knock out. And that's a big reason why a lot of experts are picking all number 1 seeds to be in the Final Four. Because it's a situation where you got the teams at the top that just have great guard play and great overall, teams. Auburn, in the South region. Florida out of the SEC put together a great year. Duke obviously is going to rely heavily on whether or not Cooper Flagg plays, but that's another Final Four pick, as well as Houston out of the Midwest. That all 4 number 1 seeds it's very difficult to not pick all of those teams. But let's look at the West. Let's look at the South region with Auburn at the number 1 seed. I don't see anybody really testing Auburn too much. Louisville and Creighton, to me, is a coin flip game at 8 and 9, as chalky as that sounds. Now, the one that's really intriguing involves the Tritons of UCSD against Michigan. They're picked as one of the teams that could potentially be that 12 seed upset or that high seeded upset over a team like Michigan. Michigan right now is only a 2.5 point favorite against UCSD on Thursday, which will be a Thursday night contest at 7 o'clock on TBS. That's an interesting matchup. Texas A&M and Yale. Yale's another team too. Player to watch in that game, Wade Taylor IV for Texas A&M. He's the Aggies' all-time scorer and best shooter, and reliable and motivated. A&M probably will handle Yale, but you never want to take Yale lightly, winning the Ivy League. I mean, I feel like they've been in the NCAA tournament the last handful of years. As for Yale, John Pololakis is a left-handed shooter, scored 28 points in Yale's win over Auburn last season and 23 points against Purdue this year. They got guys that could play, and they've played against some of the top teams in college basketball. And he's good enough to challenge Texas A&M, but it's whether or not Aggie's offensive rebounding really takes over, and they average 17 second-chance points per game, highest in Division I. It's probably going to be too much for Yale in the first round. The winner of San Diego State and North Carolina plays Ole Miss. That's a good Ole Miss team. Sean Padula of Ole Miss, former Virginia Tech star, is their best shooter. 78 three-pointers made this season for the Rebs and handles the ball for Ole Miss. Now, I think North Carolina and San Diego State has a chance in that game potentially after we find out tonight's matchup or tonight's game. But, Ole Miss is a tough out as a 6th seed. The Iowa State 3-14 matchup against Lipscomb. Iowa State is interesting, but Iowa State, it's just whether or not they're going to be healthy. A healthy Iowa State team can run to the Final Four, but the problem is they're not healthy. Curtis Jones, best 6th man of the country, can carry in the country, score in bunches, but they're not going to have Keyshawn Gilbert. It's going to be good enough to beat Lipscomb, but if he could come back, then you might be able to get some play out of Iowa State. But other than that, you look at the bottom of the field, Michigan State probably going to cruise to an Elite 8 on the bottom half of the South bracket. Marquette, New Mexico, that thing's going to be a dogfight. Marquette, New Mexico is going to be a great matchup. That's one of the best matchups in the first couple of games. That game will be on Friday at 4:25. Cam Jones of Marquette, lefty with an early candidate for National Player of the Year before Johnny Broome and of Auburn and Cooper Flagg of Duke really separated themselves. But he took over at point guard duty from Tyler Kolek and has been great. And you look at New Mexico, obviously we've seen them a couple of times, but Donovan Dent's one of the best point guards in the country. Don't be surprised if the Lobos are able to clip Marquette in the first round of the NCAA tournament. That's going to be a great game. But otherwise, that in the South, Michigan State, Tom Izzo doesn't lose in the first round of the NCAA tournament. And they're going to handle Bryant. And then a game against Marquette or New Mexico, they're probably better than both of them. If Iowa State's healthy, then Michigan State probably gets a little bit of a challenge, but I could see Michigan State kind of playing their way through the Final Four. If they can knock off Auburn. But Auburn might have too much guard play. It's a very interesting South region. Head over to the side they're paired with Florida. Florida is the favorite again. The number 1 seeds are getting a lot of love right now. Interesting matchup in UConn and Oklahoma. UConn and, the West region's the most difficult region by far in the NCAA tournament with some heavy hitters. Florida is a lot of people's pick to win the national championship, but the way that they've been able to play the last couple of weeks and have shown a lot of bright spots, just winning the SEC tournament. You got UConn, the back-to-back reigning national champions as the 8th seed in this particular region. Oklahoma played a gauntlet in the SEC. You got Memphis and Colorado State. That's going to be a rock fight. You go down the list. Grand Canyon's a sneaky team out of the WAC. That's a school that not a lot of teams want to be able to play. Maryland did really well in the Big Ten. Missouri and Drake. Missouri near the top of the SEC. Drake is a team that's won a lot of big games this year. Texas Tech, one of the best teams in the Big 12, is a 3 seed. I mean, look at the coaching matchup in the bottom part of the West region. Kansas with Bill Self, Arkansas with Coach Cal, and St. John's with Rick Pitino. I mean, you're going to have a great coaching matchup in the first round and in the round of 32 to try to play into the Sweet 16 with those 3 teams. And that's not even including Omaha, who had a good season. That is a gauntlet of a bracket in the West region. Moving over to the East, just to look at it briefly. I mean, Cooper Flag health status might affect this, but Duke's going to probably run away with it. Mississippi State Baylor's going to be a great game, an 8-9 matchup. Oregon, don't test Oregon in the first round. Oregon-Arizona matchup in the round of 32 is going to be great. BYU, VCU is a great first-round matchup. Wisconsin should be able to handle Montana. I could see BYU playing their way to the Sweet 16. Vanderbilt and St. Mary's, you got the machine that is the St. Mary's Gales, and I watched them in person. They are a machine in the West Coast Conference. Vanderbilt, using that strength of schedule, they've knocked off a lot of good teams this year, including Tennessee. A potential rematch between Vanderbilt and Alabama in the round of 32. St. Mary's, is that team that might be able to knock off Alabama. But that's a fun region up there in the East region. And then the final region we'll talk about before we preview Gwen and Chris real quick. Houston, they've been knocked out of the Sweet 16 the last couple of years. This might be the year that they finally make it to the Final Four. But unfortunately for them, they get Gonzaga or Georgia in the second round, which is probably going to be Gonzaga and a high-powered team in the Gonzaga Bulldogs at the West Coast Conference. And then in the bottom part of the bracket, Tennessee. Tennessee is one of the teams that meets all the qualifiers to be a national championship in terms of metrics of where they're at right now. Tennessee has a good chance to knock off Houston in the Elite Eight for an opportunity to go to the Final Four. That's kind of a brief synopsis of the bracket. You got a lot of great matchups in the first couple of rounds. The NCAA tournament should be fun on Thursday. Be sure to join us on Friday, live at Dave & Buster's. Coming up on Gwen and Chris, Dylan Cease, Connor Joe, Brandon Lockridge, and Jason Adam, all joining Gwen and Chris today. Going to be a fun day for the two as they get you ready for Padres baseball coming up at 6 o'clock as the Padres take on the Giants for a night game out there in Peoria, Arizona. Stephen Kolek on the hill tonight for the Pods, trying to battle for that final spot in the rotation. Working against Kyle Hart, working against Randy Vasquez. I mean, that's going to be a fun little matchup there, or battle for the final spot. We talked to Sam Levitt about it. It's still pretty much even. So a lot of college basketball talk, a lot of Padres talk. We'll continue tomorrow on the Braden Surprenant Show. Let's weigh on that poll one more time on today's Do You Know Ball poll. Can you watch your favorite team at a watch party or a public setting? 56% of you said that you can do it. 43% of you say don't bug me. I'm gonna say you guys don't know ball on that. I don't like messing around with going to certain places with my favorite team and the biggest game that they got to play. San Diego Padres make it to a World Series. I'd love to watch it with all of you guys live at a watch party, but I'm going to be a little extra nervous doing that than if I would watching any other team, at these watch parties. I don't mind watching San Diego State at a bar because I didn't go to San Diego State, but TCU football is a different story. I gotta watch alone. A lot of people that weighed in. Derek Sutherland on social media. Can I? Yes, but I prefer to be alone. RLA LOC Relic on Twitter says, as long as the game audio is louder than the crowd, I'm good. Christian says depends on the magnitude of the game. And then Frank the Tank WM on Twitter, depends on the game. I can watch certain in public, but other times I need to be focused and not have distractions. I'm the same way. Been fun talking to all of you. Padres baseball and NCAA tournament. Aztecs will tip off at 6:10. First pitch for the Padres baseball, 97 to the Fan, 6:05. Coming up next, Tony Gwynn Jr., Chris Ello, and Matt Scraby on Gwen and Chris.